Good morning, everyone. My name is Giulia Carboni. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you to the EU Life Info Days of the 2022 Calls for Proposal of the LIFE program. It is an honor for me to be again here with you to accompany you along these 3 days of information about the new LIFE calls. I don't want to take more of your time, then let's now have a look at the agenda for today. So day one, it's totally focused on the general and financial aspects of the calls with 2 slots for question and answers. Day 2, tomorrow, a few presentations and above all, time for question and answers on nature, circular economy and quality of life, climate action and strategic integrated and strategic nature projects in the afternoon. Day 3, Friday, a full morning in the good company of the colleagues from the Clean Energy Transition sub-programs with various sessions and parallel sessions. But let's now focus on today. So I will very soon give the floor to our CINEA director, Dirk Beckers. Then I will call on the virtual stage the 3 representatives of the 3 director generals behind the LIFE program, DG Environment, DG Climate Action, DG Energy. Around 9:45, we will have Angelo Salsi joining us for a special message. Later, Anne Burrell and Christian Strasser will tell us more about the structure and the general content of the call. And then, with the support of other colleagues, we will open the first question and answers via Slido. Last, but certainly not least, we will close with the financial aspects and dedicated Q&As with our colleague Anne Vermalen. And then you'll have the full afternoon free to meet virtually other applicants and available CINEA experts. So let us focus now on how we do this. Exactly as you all well know, all the information material is available on the LIFE website, and you can apply via the European Commission funding and tender opportunity portals. After some long days of work, all the calls have been published. They are there waiting for you, all the call documents. Still, something might not be clear. You might have some doubts regarding your application. This is why these days of Q&As are for you. So ask us your question in Slido. The hashtag is EULive22. So, and now, without taking more of our time, I invite Dirk Beckers, Director of CINEA, to join us for some official words of welcome. Dirk, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is, as already announced, Dirk Beckers. I'm the Director of CINEA, the European Climate Infrastructure Environment Executive Agency, which is managing a number of EU funding programs on behalf of the European Commission and in support, of course, of the Green Deal objectives. I'm definitely very happy to address to you today in the context of the launch of this new LIFE Calls for Proposal 2022. This year, as you might have heard, or as you know, we are celebrating 1 year of CINEA, but as well 30 years of the LIFE program. And as my colleague announced, Angelo Salsi will explain you more a bit later on. Next slide, please. So to start with, I would like to give you some information about CINEA. CINEA was established on the 1st of April 2021 with the launch of the new MFF and as a continuation of the management of some programs from 2 previous agencies, namely EASME and ENER. By capitalizing on the successful achievements of these agencies, CINEA also manages new programs such as parts of the Horizon Europe program or the new renewable energy financing mechanism. Now, to implement this portfolio, both the staffing and the budget are subject to considerable growth. From the 34 billion that we were managing up to 2020, we are going to more than 58 billion up to 27, and from 300 staff colleagues going to more than to around 500 by 2027. Now, at the moment, for your information, our agency is managing more than 2,800 projects, which of course are mostly from the legacy we have. And there is a steady growth of the portfolio that we expect to reach around 4,500 projects by 2027. Now, in this respect and on all of these programs, our added value is that we promote the funding and provide green advisory services to potential beneficiaries. We engage directly with beneficiaries and stakeholders by providing them support all along the project life cycle. We work on raising the visibility of the program results. We provide feedback to the European Commission, of course, which is quite important on the project and project implementation so that they can take that into account in the design of the new policies. And of course, we look as well at harmonization and looking for synergies between the different programs that we managed to avoid as well. I would say double financing, etc. Next slide, please. Sure. So as mentioned in the beginning, CINEA has a key role to play in supporting the European Green Deal, being the EU focal point for green infrastructure projects. As you probably know, the European Green Deal is the plan to make the EU's economy sustainable, and we can do this by turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities and by making the transition just and inclusive for everyone. Now, the EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050. Reaching this target requires, of course, actions by all sectors, which are covered by CINEA's portfolio, like investing in environmentally friendly technology and infrastructure, supporting industry to innovate, rolling out cleaner, cheaper, and healthier forms of private and public transport, by decarbonizing the energy sector, ensuring that buildings are more energy efficient, and last but not least, by working with international partners to improve global environmental standards. Next slide, please. Now, CINEA will deliver the EU Green Deal through the 7 programs that we're managing. You can see them on the screen, and they are the Connecting Europe Facility 2 for transport and energy, the Renewable Financing Mechanism, the Just Transition Mechanism, and then the Public Sector Loan Facility part pillar, Cluster 5 of the Horizon Europe program, the Innovation Fund, which we started a bit more than a year ago, the LIFE program, and the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquacultural Fund. Now, I don't intend to go in detail of each of these programs. Visit CINEA's website, where you can find a lot of details on the different programs, on the next calls, and on histories, on the project success stories, etc. But now let me say a few words about the LIFE program in the context of today's Info Day. Next slide, please. I'm definitely pleased to say that the LIFE program celebrated already 1 year in our agency. On top of it, already the 30 years, as I mentioned before, that we're celebrating as well this month. Now, with its clear mission to contribute to a sustainable, climate neutral, and resilient economy, reversing loss of wildlife habitats and species across all sectors, LIFE constitutes an important instrument to deliver on the ambitions of the European Green Deal. And more specifically, LIFE contributes to transforming the EU into a modern, resource-efficient, and competitive economy with zero net emissions by 2050 and with economic growth separated from resources use. Now, it contributes as well to protecting, conserving, enhancing the nature across the continent, to safeguarding the health and well-being of citizens from environment and climate-related impacts, and by ensuring that Europe is building its energy system on renewable energy sources and energy efficiency for a clean energy transition. Next slide, please. Now, if you're interested to know which funding opportunities are currently open with us, I would invite you, as I just mentioned as well, to visit our dedicated call for proposals page on our CINEA's website, where you will definitely get an overview of the ongoing calls for proposals across all programs that we are managing in CINEA. As you will see there, 4 calls for proposals are currently open, which is the Innovation Fund on small scale projects, Horizon Europe with several calls on energy and transport. We have opened the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Facility calls on SF Transport, which has got multiple cut-off dates. And then, of course, more importantly for all of you now, the new LIFE calls for proposal 2022 with multiple deadlines. On this, of course, more details will be given throughout today and the coming days by my colleagues. Next slide, please. So I would like to end, because you have a very busy day, so I should not take too much of your time, but I would like to end by inviting you to follow up, of course, on the social media, which you can see on the screen as well, where you can find them, where you will see that both CINEA corporate accounts and myself, we are communicating on a regular basis about funding opportunities, info days, as well as project results. We also have a dedicated LIFE and Clean Energy newsletters and social media accounts, which I recommend you to sign up to and stay tuned with the program so that you get all the latest information up to date in real time. So with this, I would like to thank you sincerely for your attention for this short introduction. Wish you a very interesting info day and good luck with the preparations of your proposal. So all the best and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Thanks for joining us today and for welcoming the live potential applicants to CINEA. I'm always impressed. Yes, we'll let you go, but I'm always impressed by the variety of green programs run at CINEA. So it's a pleasure to be here together.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Just a technical message for all those asking on Slido, because we are following there. Yes, the recordings of today will be available, and the slides as well will be on the live website in a few days. Is it all? If it's all good from the technical side, I would like to invite everybody to go down the road. So from CINEA, we are diving into life because indeed that's the focus of the day, and a crucial element of the LIFE program is to understand, and which is important to understand the program better, is to know its policy context, where it comes from, what are the bases. This is why I have the pleasure to give now the virtual floor to three colleagues from the three parents or partner DGs, as you prefer to call them. I would first give the floor to Jean-Claude Merciol, advisor of the Directorate A, General Affairs, Knowledge and Resources in DG Environment. Jean-Claude, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. And as Giulia just said, it's true that when we hear Dirk, we are very impressed. And I would say that in addition, not only we are impressed, sorry, but we are very happy, I can say, for the REPowerEU program to work in close cooperation with CINEA, to have, say, all the colleagues in CINEA working all together, because it's really as you can have imagined, so it's really a strong and efficient agency. So great for that. And so coming, as I say, to the LIFE program as such, because you have seen all the other programs, but I would like so now that we start refocusing on the LIFE program, and just first a few words, because Dirk mentioned it already, but just to make clear for all the participants which are newcomers, I would say a few words on the LIFE program as such. So LIFE aims, in fact, to facilitate the shift toward a sustainable, circular, energy efficient, renewable energy-based economy, which is as well climate neutral and climate resilient. So LIFE contributes, among others, to protect, restore, and improve quality of environment, including for air, water, and soil, and to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. Moreover, LIFE tackles degradation of ecosystem, including through supporting the implementation and management of the Natura 2000 network. And LIFE, very important, is a program which is much linked to policy development and implementation. And this is the reason why this morning, as Giulia mentioned, we want to update you on some recent policy developments. And I will present some of them, and you will see that really we have a lot of important initiatives which has taken place. And of course, others will come. I will first start by mentioning the Environmental Action Program. So the 8th Environmental Action Program, it has been adopted recently. So it has, 2nd of May, it entered into force. It is a legally agreed common agenda for the EU for environmental policy until 2030. So the action program confirmed the EU long-term vision to 2050, which is that we all live well within planetary boundaries. And it sets our priorities objective for 2030 and the condition needed to reach this objective. So this action program called for active engagement of all of us to ensure that the EU climate and environmental laws are effectively implemented. It represents the EU basis for achieving the United Nations 2030 agenda and its sustainable development goal. And the program set 6 priority objectives for 2030, which are first, climate neutrality by 2050, second, enhancing adaptive capacity, so strengthening resilience and reducing vulnerability to climate change. Third, advancing toward a regenerative growth model, which means decoupling economic growth from resource use and environmental degradation, and accelerating the transition to a circular economy. Fourth, pursuing zero pollution ambition. Fifth, protecting, preserving, and restoring biodiversity and enhancing natural capital. And sixth, reducing environmental and climate pressures related to production and consumption. And regarding the other initiatives, I would like to mention as well the initiative on biodiversity. And regarding biodiversity, the Commission has adopted last year a couple of initiatives. First of all, it was the proposal for an EU forest strategy, which was adopted in July. This strategy recognizes the central and multifunctional role of forests and the contribution of foresters. It considers the entire forest-based value chain for achieving a sustainable and climate-neutral economy by 2050, and for preserving lively and prosperous rural areas. This strategy sets a vision and concrete action to improve the quantity and quality of forests and strengthens their protection, restoration, and resilience. And it aims to adapt Europe forest to the new conditions, weather extremes, and high uncertainties brought about by climate change. The second initiative on biodiversity is the EU soil strategy adopted in November 2021. This strategies for 2030 sets out a framework and concrete measures to protect and restore soils and ensure that they are used sustainably. It sets a vision and objective to achieve healthy soils by 2050 with concrete action by 2030. And it also announces new initiatives to come on soil health law by 2023 in order to ensure a level playing field and a high level of environmental and health protections. The third initiative on biodiversity was adopted in November as well, and it's a legislative proposal for minimizing the risk of deforestation and forest degradation associated to products which are placed on the EU market. This proposal is a flagship initiative under the European Green Deal with the goal, it has a goal to minimize the EU impact on forests worldwide. And the proposal is extremely important as the EU demand on forest risk commodities drive agriculture expansion, which is the biggest cause of global deforestation and the biggest driver for biodiversity loss on land. And as you know, so global deforestation rates, especially in the tropic, where forests have the highest climate and biodiversity value, have remained high for years or have even increased. I would like then to mention as well the circular economy area, where the Commission has presented this year, so end of March, a circular economy package for making sustainable products norm in Europe. It includes a proposal for regulation on eco-design for sustainable products, the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textile, and the revision of the construction products regulation, as well as a legislative proposal to empower consumers in green transition. And the last initiative I would like to mention is regarding zero pollution, with the zero pollution vision for 2050, which is to reduce the level of pollution for air, water, soil, to the level which in fact will be considered as no more harmful to health and natural ecosystem. And the Zero Pollution Action Plan adopted in May this year is translated into key targets for 2030 in order to reduce pollution at source. And I would just like to conclude by adding an additional element which I think is important for us, which is, the new possibilities the LIFE program has offered, and which is the association to third countries. And as you may know, in fact, the new LIFE program forces these possibilities, and it is in fact a possibility which is possibilities offered for all the EU programs. So it's not specific to life as such. And especially because the EU wants to lead the response to address global environment and climate challenge. And this environmental ambition of the Green Deal will not be achieved only at the level of the EU acting alone, but we need, of course, the cooperation with the others. And that's the reason why is that the driver of climate change and biodiversity loss are global and they are not limited to our national borders. And life with its own objective, as I mentioned, so to contribute to shift towards sustainable, circular, efficient, energy efficient economy is really perfect instrument for that. And so further to these possibilities offered by the life regulation, we have received already the request from Iceland, and Iceland has now already joined us, joined the life program since the 1st January 2021. And we have received, I say, 8 other, I would say, intention to join life. And just to mention them by alphabetic order, we have Albania, Andorra, Faroe Islands, Israel, Moldova, North Macedonia, Turkey, and Ukraine. And the objective through these associations is to establish a mutually advantaged conditions to support development and implementation of legislation on policy and environment. And it will reinforce the third country cooperation through, say, the support of projects. And at present, we are starting. We have started the formal negotiation with Ukraine, and we hope to sign soon the agreement. And others will continue. And this is the reason why you will see, and you have already seen for some of them, but you will last year, but you will see this year that it's mentioned in the call that the applicant from the third countries can present proposal. But of course, no agreement will be signed if by that moment when we have finalized the evaluation and the grant preparation, the association agreement is not signed. So with all these elements, as you can see, we have say a lot on the table, and I wish you, say, all the best for the day. And I think my colleague will add even more initiative for the other sectors. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Jean-Claude. Thank you for keeping the time and still giving us so much information. I would like now to invite Maria Velkova, Deputy Head of Unit Low Carbon Solutions from DG Climate Action, to join us and give us more information about the background on the climate side of life. Hello, Maria, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you to give you some further background on climate action. As Jean-Claude already mentioned, some of our key targets, i.e. the climate neutrality for 2050. Well, climate crisis is real, and it is important to underline what is happening and what the EU is doing, and what you as potential future life beneficiaries can do to help. So where are we? I mean, the climate crisis is a reality. That is unfortunately the situation, and everybody has seen a lot of the bad news that are coming in the last years on wildfires, floods, hurricanes, droughts. Maybe you have experienced even yourself or your families some of these events. And well, not to mention how much the biodiversity is actually suffering. And despite all the efforts, global and in the EU, we are still not on track actually to reach the Paris Agreement target, or to stay within 1.5 degrees increase of temperatures globally. So in fact, very recently, the IPCC came up with an up-to-date estimate based on all policies that have been adopted globally, which shows us that we are on a path towards 3.2 degrees increase in temperatures. So, of course, this is really very worrying for us, and we do everything possible to help climate through mitigation and to prepare our economies and nature through adaptation work. So at the EU level, we have, of course, the Green Deal initiative, which is actually the overarching framework within which we are working. Within it, there is a lot of actually focus on climate. In fact, 1/3 of the spending at EU level has to go to climate action. And what is really important for us is now that we have actually a binding legislation, which is the climate law. This climate law was adopted last year, and we have moved from objectives to real targets. So the 2050 climate neutrality is a real target. And on top of it, we have actually now a target for 2030, which is to reduce emissions by 55% compared to 1990 levels. What does this mean actually in reality? This is really very ambitious, and we actually in the EU would like to show that this is possible, because the EU has actually less than 10% of global emissions. So if actually whatever we do in the EU is not replicated in the rest of the world, we are not going to win the battle. But nonetheless, it's important that we develop the solutions, and actually LIFE program is one excellent example of how this can be done on the ground. This is why it is so important what you're doing, what CINEA is doing, and what all my colleagues here are doing. So last year, actually, to make this more ambitious target for 2030 a reality, the Commission actually adopted a set of proposals for revision of existing legislation, and also some new proposals. This would allow actually all sectors to reduce emissions deeper. So, for example, we have a more ambitious target for the emission trading scheme. We're expanding the scope of the emission trading scheme to maritime emissions. In addition, we are proposing a new emission trading scheme for buildings and for road transport. This will work in parallel. And we hope that it will have really a big impact on emissions in these key sectors. We are revising the renewable energy and energy efficiency directives. We are proposing to revise the regulation for land use, forestry, and agriculture. And the Commission has proposed to set a more ambitious target for net removals for each member state by 2035. In the road transport specifically, we have proposed to reduce emissions from new passenger cars and vans by introducing a zero tailpipe emission target for new cars and vans as of 2035. This was last year. And actually, by the end of the year, we're going to propose also a CO2 standard for heavy-duty vehicles, because, in fact, a lot of transport of goods goes on roads. And, in fact, heavy-duty vehicles represent 27% of road transport emissions. In addition, last year, in December, we came up with a new communication on sustainable carbon cycles, which is tackling the so-called negative emissions on net carbon removals, because what our modeling shows is that we can actually not reduce emissions 100% in all sectors. So, for example, we will still have in 2050 some emissions from agriculture and transport. Therefore, in order to reach climate neutrality, we have to deliver also negative emissions on net carbon removals. And there are possibilities for net carbon removals, both nature-based and industry-based, which are still not incentivized enough. For example, like forestation is one good example, but rewetting of peatlands in the area of land, or like combinations of bioenergy and carbon capture and storage is an industrial solution that still doesn't get incentivized enough. And as a next step, we are going to propose a framework for certification of these carbon removals still this year. Also, we have proposed to revise the existing regulations on fluorinated greenhouse gases and ozone depleting substances, because they are very successful, but even in this area, we need to tighten controls on these substances to reduce the impact of these substances on the climate. So really, in all sectors of the economy, there is something happening, but well, the most important thing is reducing emissions and finding sustainable alternatives. Today actually is quite a big day also for the European Commission, because the European Commission is going to announce the REPowerEU action plan, which is our response to the Ukraine crisis. This will go hand in hand with all these proposals that I mentioned. It is just putting a lot more emphasis on diversification of energy resources, on accelerating introduction of renewable energy, energy efficiency, but also promoting the hydrogen economy, the green hydrogen economy. I'm not going to talk more about this here because I expect my colleague from DG Energy will touch upon this. So I will move directly to adaptation. Adaptation, the main actually our strategy is called the EU Climate Adaptation Strategy. It was adopted in February last year, so most probably you know quite a lot about it. So but what is new perhaps is that in the climate law also we talk about the need to ensure continuous progress in enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience and reducing vulnerability to climate change, meaning that adaptation is also now a legal duty for all EU institutions and for national governments. And I also want to make one last link to the mission on adaptation to climate change. EU missions are new and exciting element actually of Horizon Europe research and innovation framework programs. And in fact, they put together all action existing in one area. So the adaptation mission, for example, aims to support 150 European regions to become climate resilient by 2030. I know that a lot of LIFE projects has actually worked in a way to achieve the objectives of this mission, and we hope that LIFE projects will continue to do so. But putting together all actions will actually help drive these good solutions faster and replicate them to all regions in the EU. To conclude, let me say that having climate strategies and plans in place is one thing, putting them into practice is another thing. The LIFE program plays an important role in supporting the implementation of EU legislation and policies on a large territorial scale. LIFE projects can make a real difference on the ground and are key contributors to implementation of the European Green Deal and the climate neutrality objectives by 2050. So this is all I wanted to say, and I want actually to wish you good luck and success in your proposals for support from the LIFE program. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for intervening. Climate change is real, you said it, but there are measures and we are here to tackle it together. Thanks a lot. It is now my pleasure to invite to join us Claudia Canevari, Head of Unit Energy Efficiency from DG Energy. Claudia, there you are. Great. I'll give you quickly the floor. I know you have a busy day ahead, so please let us know the energy context behind LIFE.
Indeed, many thanks, Giulia. Good morning to everyone. Indeed, today is an important day. I mean, there are many important days, but it's an important day because the Commission is going to adopt the REPowerEU communication, the follow-up of what was adopted on the 8th of March. So indeed, there will be quite a lot, and we will hear around lunchtime, I think, what the final decisions of the college are. So it would be, I think, very interesting for everybody. But just a warm of welcome also from my side to all participants, and a big thank to CINEA for the organization of these live info days. As you know, or now I think for sure, the clean energy transition are a newcomer in projects are newcomer in the LIFE program, and we are indeed very happy to see that this sub-program on the clean energy transition is becoming an integral part of LIFE. In the past, MFFs, energy efficiency related issues, energy renewables related issues, so sustainable energy were covered by Horizon 2020, and before that by Intelligent Energy Europe. But we are happy to have more of the clean energy transition activities under the LIFE framework, and we hope that many of you that were following the previous programs and that are now in the info days are also happy as we are to be part of this big and important family. As you know very well, this year the info days and the publication of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Call for 2022 take place at a very timely moment. And I've already mentioned one of the reasons, of course, but it is indeed very important to have the support from the LIFE projects to continue our activities, to have a more widespread and cross-cutting support for energy efficiency and for the local renewable deployment. Following Russia's tragic and unjustified aggression to Ukraine, the case, of course, for a rapid clean energy transition, where energy efficiency has a clear and pivotal place, has never been stronger and clearer. And in fact, as you all know, Europe is facing a double crisis. On the one side, from the energy point of view, of course, on the one side, there are the high energy prices that have been there already for quite some time. They started, unfortunately, well before the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and the crisis of the security of supply. And of course, this raises a number of concerns that need to be addressed by an accelerated clean energy transition. And this is exactly why the Commission has already developed, already adopted the REPower communication on the 8th of March, and there is the package that will be published today. And the objective is really to phase out the dependence on fossil fuels imports from Russia by 2027. And this is going to be through the diversification of supply and the further acceleration of renewables deployment and energy efficiency measures. I will not tell you more now because, of course, everything is under embargo, waiting for the decision by the College of Commissioners. But I invite all of you to look into the media and to in the Europa pages today. There will be a lot of communication and a lot of also of material that I hope you will find useful also in your, let's say, context to explain, to see and to explain what this REPowerEU package is about. The Clean Energy Transition Sub-Program and the work on the call on implementation done by our colleagues in CINEA has obviously a seminal role to play in this regard, because it is an enabler, as I mentioned already, of accelerating energy efficiency and local renewable uptake. And beyond, in fact, the recent developments in Ukraine, we should not forget that the EU has also a very important objective, which is the full decarbonization of its economy by 2050. And we've already adopted various, let's say, strategic documents strategic documents and legislative proposals in order to allow the EU to reach this very important target. And of course, one important step is the Fit for 55 package that was adopted in July last year, which is to reach the 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And in this context, the role of sustainable energy is super important. As you know, energy efficiency and renewables are preconditions for achieving the decarbonization of the economy. And this is why we have concrete proposals in this package adopted last year to update and strengthen both the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewables Energy Directive to make them fit for this 55% objective by 2030. The two proposals are in the co-legislation process. This means that the two co-legislators, the Council and the Parliament, are now discussing, they are let's say, establishing their respective positions so that they can then discuss together in the so-called trilogues and find an agreement, which will be then the text that will be put in the published on the official journal of the EU, and therefore will then become let's say law, and member states will have to transpose and implement. There is a call for all these actions to be speed up because of course the recent developments call for an acceleration, as I mentioned already, of all these, and this is why the Commission is counting on the determination and ambition of Council and Parliament to let's say conclude their negotiations as soon as possible. We've seen a lot of let's say ambition and determination from the side of the French presidency, and we think that also the Czech presidency, which will come as of the 1st of July this year, will follow suit. So this is really very important. One point that I would like to mention, which I think is relevant in this context, is the energy efficiency first principle, which is one of the key proposals that are introduced by the recast of the Energy Efficiency Directive. It's already available in the sense that is in the governance regulation, but the proposal made by the Commission to recast the Energy Efficiency Directive is giving a stronger role to this principle. It is creating some kind of accountability and reporting, and the idea is really to apply this principle in all planning, investments, and legislative decisions. And in this regard, and this is why I'm mentioning it today, we are very pleased to have this topic reflected in the 2022 Life Clean Energy Transition calls, with a topic on making the energy efficiency first more operational. There are, of course, many other calls, many of the topics in the call that are focusing, for example, on policy implementation to address, in particular, the energy performance of buildings, and which is a very important area. I don't think it makes sense to recall all the different call topics because, of course, there are many. Allow me to mention just one more, which is in relation to the decarbonization of heating and cooling in both individual systems in buildings and in centralized district heating. And this is obviously a very important area because we need absolutely to address not only buildings on the one side, but also heating and cooling on the other side, be it residential or industrial, because there is a very high untapped potential, and we absolutely need need to bring these sectors, these areas on board in order to make sure that we not only we decarbonize, but also we decrease dependence from fossil fuels from Russia and also from other third countries, because of course this is also obviously very important. So, but what is important for me to underline is the clear link between what are the life clean energy transition goals for 2022 and the policy priorities that the European Union has, because of course it is essential to make sure that this link is there, because we count on the support of the program to strengthen the policy development. It is in fact now also essential, and this is also part of the objective of these Life Info Days, to try to attract as many stakeholders as possible, to attract as many applicants as possible. And this should be, as it was already recalled, not only in all member states, but also in associated countries. And in fact, just now briefly to conclude, the first message is that I'm definitely convinced, together obviously with my colleagues, that the 2022 program will enable us to find useful and concrete solutions that are able to contribute to the achievement of the energy and climate targets. And the second point is that I really hope that these days of info sessions and exchanges between all of us will serve as a very useful input to the preparation of many quality applications for the new Life 2022 calls. And we are very happy, of course, to address any possible need for clarification. So many thanks to all of you for your attention. I wish all of us a very useful and constructive days. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much for your time and very interesting and timely speech. I let you go now to continue following this busy day. Thank you so much. And it is now time, and of course, thanks to all the three speakers from the three DGs. It's now time to go back to CINEA to invite Angelo Salsi to join us, Head of Department Natural Resources, Climate, Sustainable Blue Economy and Clean Energy in our agency. I invite Angelo to take the floor and to join us for a special message.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you very much, Giulia, for introducing me. Now it's my turn to bring you roughly through three different items. So the first thing, as you've heard, we will be with you for 3 days in a row, and we'll bring you through all the mysteries of how to apply to the LIFE program. The first thing I wanted to touch upon is that we are now moving into the second round, the second year after a very big change for the LIFE program. So last year, for us, it was the first round using the so-called e-grant IT architecture, the system that allows now all citizens of Europe to apply for almost any sort of financial support directly managed by Brussels, whether this is Horizon, Life, Erasmus, or many other type of programs. So this was a huge change after more than 25 years using our own tools and application systems. And obviously it was a big change for us. It was a big change for our constituency as well. So far, so good. We faced problems. Applicants did have to adapt, but overall, we did successfully run our call for proposal of 2021. And now we are entering into the second round, obviously hoping that we will consolidate our systems, that we will clean up the tweaks that we faced, and so that life will be hopefully easier and simpler for everyone. Like in every transition, I am asking once more to our historical constituency. We have many applicants that come again and again to life. To be patient, I'm sure that by playing it in that way, we will learn how to handle this new machinery. And at the end of the day, we will probably in a few years from now forget about our past systems and we'll be all happy on board of this new corporate tool. So this was the first point I wanted to touch upon. The second one is probably more appealing or more glamour, if I may say so. You are participating in a sort of a special event because it's the usual yearly info day that we organize for every new call. But it's a bit special because it falls into a special year. In 1992, on the 21st of May, in a morning of many years ago, actually 30 years ago, it so happened that the legislator, meaning the council and the parliament, they adopted a magic piece of legislation, which was the first ever LIFE regulation. And the LIFE program came to life, allow me to say so. It was also a particular moment because in the same moment, another piece of legislation was adopted, the Habitats Directive. And there was a sort of a inbreeding mechanism that took place between the Little Life program and the ambitious Habitats Directive that was completing the framework of nature conservation together with the Birds Directive. And Life and Natura 2000, they became an immediate marriage. So much that everyone acknowledges the fact that the Little Life program has made an enormous difference, a positive difference, obviously, for the largest network of protected areas in the world that we hold in good old Europe, which is our Natura 2000 network. Obviously, life is not only nature, so we have now collected more than 5,500 projects financed since 1992. They cover all elements of environment that you might think of: noise, chemicals, water, air quality, soil, just name one. And I'm sure that we will find one or more or many of life projects in the past. Then climate change kicked in, and now we also have our friends from the clean energy transition, so the energy component, in particular the energy efficiency component, is part of life. So life has become bigger and bigger, but it has kept some of these distinctive features that have made the success of this program. It is still largely a program which is managed in a bottom-up, with a bottom-up approach. So we are trying to create the framework in which we can collect the best ideas from the ground. It's still very much a flexible tool. Most of the parts of the program are still designed around projects that can be shaped in the way the applicants wish, in terms of size of the project, in terms of duration of the project, in terms of number of partners in the project. And this makes it special because many other programs and several other parts of life as well tend instead to create a set of elements or criteria that you have to obey to put together a project. So obviously there is a functional element that makes the distinction between one type of projects and the other, but what we used to call the traditional project, currently called the standard action project, are still the bulk of the LIFE program, and they will still make, I believe, the success of the future of this program. The other element which make the participation in the LIFE program a sort of a special adventure is the sort of branding element. So LIFE has managed, like other programs of the EU, I could mention Erasmus as one of the probably the most visible and most prominent, to be not only visible, but also to be very close to peoples, not as close if Erasmus could be, that really gets into the living room of our families, thanks to our kids and their friends that participate in an Erasmus experience. But life can get very, very close to local groups, small administrations, municipalities, NGOs, startups and small and medium enterprises. So it is indeed as much as you could get a people's program. And this makes it an incredibly powerful sort of visual passerelle between the European Union and what it means and what it can mean for our citizens and the citizens themselves. So I hope that through life and through the eyes of those and the images created by the many projects that we have financed, the people, the citizens of the European Union can better understand what is the value of living together in an experiment like we are still creating all together, which is the European Union. So this element of life is associated to a very strong quality brand. So once you successfully participate in a call and your project proposal is selected and financed, there is a certain sense of you're proud of your achievement, because it's by far not an easy task. We are very demanding, and our evaluation process and the submission of proposal, it's a very demanding exercise. And then it kicks in right after a feeling of pertaining to almost a club, a family. We are all driven by this quest for a better environment, the fight against climate change, increasing our energy efficiency, and so on. So all these drivers, they carry very strong positive elements, and they are sort of a glue that binds the people that carry life projects together. So if you successfully participate in a live call, you will be part of a much bigger family that will help provide you an infinite number of opportunities, and I believe that this is also a very big asset of this program. So much on the 30 years of life that will be celebrated with a bit of glamour in Brussels with a big award ceremony, where we will hand out awards to the best life projects, and we will celebrate together with some friends of the past, I hope. And but it will be mostly celebrated underground by the projects themselves. So the life projects of the past or the ongoing life projects, they are all invited to create moments of public visibility, if you want, of this particular moment of the 30 years, both for life itself and for the Natura 2000 network and the Habitat Directive. So this is the picture on the 30 years and why is it such a special year. And the last bit is I just wanted to use this opportunity, if you so allow me, many of you probably on the other side of the screen don't know me, or many others have, I had the pleasure and the honor to cross roads with. It's going to be my last info day because I will soon retire, and I hope I will enjoy the next part of my life. But believe me, I do carry with me in my heart tons of experiences, people, and moments that have made my professional life, I think, a full life, and I think that everyone should have the opportunity to have such a career as I had, and I leave you with that, hoping that you will now learn from my colleagues how to play it well in the next call for proposal, that you will put forward great proposals, and that they will turn into successful projects once we have financed them, and maybe we'll cross roads in another way in the next years to come. Thank you a lot, and goodbye to everyone, and back to you, Giulia.
Thank you, Angelo. Oh, what can I say now? Yes, we will miss you, and you know it, but we also do not believe you will be able to stay too far away from life. So I expect you to still be visiting live projects now that you have more free time. But for now, happy 30th birthday live. And let's indeed focus back on live projects. To have your idea becoming a project, you first need to apply it and succeed. The next 1 hour and a half is precisely about that. I have with me Anne Burrell and Christian Strasser, heads of units respectively of the Life Environment and the Life Climate Energy units in CINEA. So I give you the floor, Anne and Christian, you're on stage. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Giulia, and good morning and welcome to everyone. You've had lots of very inspirational messages coming to you so far. What we're going to do now is bring you a bit more into some of the more operational concrete details. Still a bit of an overview, as you're going to have more specific sessions later on today and over the coming period of the rest of this info days. But what we want to do is, Christian and myself, is to give you a first overview of the call. As you've already heard from Angelo, it's very similar to the 2021 call. Last year, the 2021 call was a huge change from what was going on before, mostly in terms of how applications were submitted. It was the first time for all of us working with the e-grants system for submitting applications. It was also the start of a new LIFE program, the 2021 to 2027 program. So there were various changes in the call details, in actually the sub-programs, in what could be submitted. But this year's call does not introduce a lot of new changes. There are a few little changes there. For those of you who already knew last year's call, you still do need to read the documents, but I think that you'll find that there's not so much new material coming to you. Of course, those of you who have never applied to LIFE before, it will all be new, but we hope by the end of these info days, it won't be so frightening to apply. So next slide, please. As you've already heard both from our director, Dirk Beckers, and also mentioned by the other speakers, the LIFE program has 4 sub-programs. They cover the full range of environment and climate policy objectives, including now the clean energy transition. The overall goal of LIFE is to support the development and the implementation of climate and environment legislation and policy. As you've heard, particularly from Angelo, we really want to have an impact on the ground. We want to make a difference in the world. We want to support our societal transition towards sustainability. It's not a big program. We can't finance everything, and therefore there is tough competition. We will prioritize projects which have a real impact, but also projects that can be replicated elsewhere or which somehow catalyze this more widespread change. You will see as you go through the call documents, we also look for the full involvement of the different stakeholders. That's because across all 4 sub-programs, we're looking for win-win solutions. We're looking for ways that we actually can help society as a whole make this shift to sustainability. Our beneficiaries are split between public, private enterprises, NGOs, but regardless of what the partnership is, we expect projects to engage with the stakeholders on the ground so that we have a real impact on the ground, so that the results of the project can be replicated elsewhere, and so that this real world experience can also help inform the development of future environment and climate policy. Next slide, please. In our presentation now, Christian and I are going to give you some more details about all of the different types of activities that can be financed under the present call. But here what you see in this slide is an overview of all of the kind of things that life finances. And you can see that the life budget also includes finance, for instance, for procurement or for blending actions. But we're not going to talk about those today. What we're going to focus on today are the grants, because that's what's covered in the call for proposals, and particularly on the action grants. I will just mention, it says on the slide, we also finance operating grants for NGOs, but this year there will not be an open call for operating grants. That is because we allocate the operating grants on the basis of framework partnership agreements, and these are only, the calls for those are only launched every 3 years. So if you've looked through the documents, you'll see there's no open call right now for NGO operating grants. We will be making a limited call to those NGOs with which we already have framework partnership agreements signed last year. So I will now go through some of these specific types of action grants to identify what kind of things are included in this year. Next slide, please. So the first type of action grant that we are announcing in this call are the standard action projects. As Angelo said, this is really the bread and butter, the heart of the LIFE program. These are the type of projects with minor changes that we've been financing for almost 3 decades. You'll see that in the standard action project calls, and there are calls under 3 of the sub-programs, we have specific subtopics mentioned, and you need to read them carefully, but there's a very broad scope, and there's a lot of flexibility for you to propose a project designed the way you think is best concerning the number of applicants, the scope geographically, the scope thematically, to make sure that you're doing something that's really relevant, that will be pertinent to having an impact on the ground, and demonstrating something that hopefully could be replicated and upscaled elsewhere. Very many of the projects under the Standard Action Project grants involve some kind of innovation, or at least demonstration of how some kind of best practice can be applied under interesting conditions, specific conditions on the ground. We do not, however, support innovation in the sense of research, theoretical research. We will only finance small, targeted research activities that are specifically necessary to the goals of this project. If you have a big research project, you probably should be looking under the Horizon programs, not under LIFE. If what you're interested in doing is showing some kind of innovation and demonstration on the ground, and maybe doing small bits of applied research within the framework of that project, then maybe LIFE is the right port of call. We do have under the various sub-programs, we have both a general call for proposal for standard action projects. We also have specific sub-calls on governance. And I just mention these particularly because these are slightly different from the projects which are going to show a material impact on the ground. These are ones rather that somehow change the governance system that impacts how environment and climate policy is applied in the member states, how it is implemented, whether it's through voluntary approaches, through justice compliance insurance, through awareness raising. But those are very, very specific type of standard action project, and that's why there's a separate sub-call for under each of the sub-programs. Certainly, I just leave you with the message that all of our projects aim to really make a difference and to catalyze change on the ground, and to have the maximum impact possible from our small limited budget. That's very important to keep in mind when you're making the proposals. Certainly, we don't normally finance large infrastructure, and certainly we pay a lot of attention to making sure that there's good value for money in both the standard action projects and of course in our other projects. You'll see here that The general rule for standard action projects is that the EU can finance up to 60% of the eligible costs, and you have to read the fine print to see what the eligible costs are. There are 2 exceptions under the Nature and Biodiversity subprogram for projects that are targeting specific priority species, either exclusively or predominantly. There's also now a limitation on the standard action projects of a maximum of 10-year duration. Next slide, please. So the next type of call that you'll find are for strategic nature projects. These are less open-ended than the standard action projects. They are focused on aiming towards undertaking activities that will catalyze the ultimate full implementation either of a priority action framework under the Habitats Directive or other certain types of nature and biodiversity plans. When I say that they catalyze the full implementation, that is because the LIFE project itself, the SNAP, won't be able to do all of the work necessary to implement these plans, but it must set up a partnership. It must set up a system of complementary actions and complementary financing that will lead towards the ultimate full implementation of the plan. These are very similar, for those of you who've been in the program before, to the nature integrated projects under our 2014 to 2020 program. The one difference is that, well, in addition to the fact that they may target plans other than the paths, the main difference, though, is an additional requirement on mainstreaming. And I just wanted to emphasize what that is. While the SNAPs, the strategic nature projects, are aiming towards the implementation of a plan, the activities in those plans, you're also required to include activities to see how to mainstream the relevant biodiversity and nature objectives, the ones that are in the target plan, into other policies and funding programs. So, for instance, this could involve activities to work with authorities who manage rural development programs, or it could be activities to address the biodiversity impact, for instance, of regional or national transportation plans or policies, but you must include some of those types of activities. SNAPs are normally long, the plans that they're implementing are complicated, but we do set a maximum of 20 years, and here again, the co-financing is 60%. Next, please. And now I'm handing over to Christian.
Thank you very much, and welcome from my side as well. Good morning to everyone listening to us today on this live info days for 3 days. In fact, we are offering that. And I continue the presentation now with strategic integrated projects, the so-called SIPs. And refer here to 2 elements. On the left-hand side, you see the sub-program Circular Economy and Quality of Life, what we are doing there. As Anne already explained, in fact, that these integrated projects are a rather new flagship. We have them since 2014 in the LIFE program. And in fact, what they are doing, they're financing, with IPs, we are financing the architecture for the implementation of larger national or regional plans, which are often anyway legal requirement for the member states, but not always. So in fact, we have some of them who are fulfilling legal requirements, others not. You see the kind of activities here. As I said, I restart again with the left-hand side. In the Circular Economy and Quality of Life sub-program, we have there the implementation, as examples, implementation of the Circular Economy Action Plan, roadmaps, related roadmaps and strategies there. We have waste, water and air there as well. There are, in fact, national waste management plans or national river basin management plans to be implemented by member states or by regions, in fact. And the LIFE program, as the integrated projects are there to fund the architecture. And what is very important, in fact, to implement the entirety of this plan, in fact, it is needed that there is complementary funding for that. So in fact, with our money, which is usually around 10 million euros, so an IP is usually around 10 million euros, we do not fund the investments needed, the activities needed to be carried out. We fund the architecture of it. You see the co-funding rate is 60%, also in the strategic integrated projects, and the duration, the maximum duration is quite long. On the right-hand side, we come to the sub-program, which is managed in my unit, the climate change mitigation and adaptation. Here, we are with IPs, in fact, focusing on national energy and climate plans, also national energy efficiency action plans. There are regional adaptation strategies in the member states, which are possible, let's say, target or possible activity under these integrated projects. There are also urban and community-based action plans pioneering the transition to a climate neutral and climate resilient society. And we have also national, regional, and industry sector specific greenhouse gas mitigation strategies. So all that is, in fact, you see at a larger scale, in contrast to the traditional sub-state action grants we have done the last 30 years. So these are the integrated projects, which are very much a flagship of LIFE and a specific activity. I come to the next elements. In fact, what we are funding is on the next slide, the technical assistance projects. In fact, a very small scale, a very small part of the LIFE program, so I don't lose too much time here. There are technical assistance projects to support the participation in standard action projects and preparations of SNAPs and SIPs. So the co-funding rate is 60%. There's a maximum amount of 70,000 euros available. Please have a look in the publication of the call. Then I come to other action grants, which is a further category, which is also quite new, in fact. In LIFE, quite new in terms of, if you read the last sentence on the slide, co-funding rate up to maximum 95%, which is very high for EU-funded programs outside research. So, and the first one, in fact, is the coordination and support actions for the transition to renewable energy and increased energy efficiency. That's related very much, or focused very much on the clean energy transition sub-program, which is the fourth sub-program under LIFE, which has been added to LIFE, in fact, now in this multi-annual financial framework. So in this financing period 21 to 27. So that's a new sub-program, in fact, and this is in fact coming from a predecessor programs, the Intelligent Energy Europe program in the past until 2013, and Horizon 2020 program, energy efficiency in the period of 2014 to 2020. So this is a new element in the program, and we have here this CSA, coordination and support actions, as the main implementing part. There are others where you see action grants benefiting organizations. They are predefined. We are funding, in fact, Impel, a network for the implementation and enforcement of environmental law, NP. Then the other one is a forum on judges for the environment. So these are specific predefined calls. So you will not have the possibility to apply for them, but it's just for information. There is also a publication, and this has been published yesterday as well, which are the so-called PLP, the policy and legislation projects, the specific policy and legislation requirements focusing. So that's also published yesterday. So you can find also relevant information then as well on our website. So as I said, the co-funding rate in these areas of other action grants is 95%, which is very high, in fact, but quite exceptional for LIFE as well. So in that sense also, I think very attractive and interesting. The next slide is then to the sub-program Nature and Biodiversity, and I give the floor back to Anne, please.
Thank you, Christian. So you've now heard a little bit overall the types of grants that we have included in this call. Before leaving you, we're going to speak a little bit about each of the individual sub-programs. You will have dedicated sessions on the individual calls later on in these info days, but this is just to kind of give you an idea of how these different types of action grants fit under the different sub-programs. So first, the sub-program on nature and biodiversity. This is the sub-program that focuses on supporting the implementation and further development of the habitats and birds directives, and with it obviously the Natura 2000 network. Also the regulation on invasive alien species, and also the other elements and components of the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030. So under this sub-program, you will find a call for standard action projects for SAPs, you will see the topics mentioned there cover indeed the Habitats of Birds Directive, the invasive alien species regulation, and the biodiversity strategy. You'll find that there's a call for activities and actions which either deal with our land base, so space for nature, or that are dealing specifically with species. You can read through the call documents to see all the details, but certainly the activities in general that are included in these SAPs are things such as interventions on the ground, like habitat restoration, development and implementation of management plans, working with stakeholders for co-management of natural capital, and in some cases, even certain types of land purchase are eligible under certain conditions. There's a sub-call for governance, as I mentioned before. So that's for the SAPs. I should mention that under the 2021 call, the Standard Action Project's call for nature and biodiversity was the most competitive call from last year. I saw some questions in Slido about success rates. Overall, LIFE has a higher success rate than, for instance, the Horizon program. But it is competitive, and you have to first consider how many projects actually fail and then how many don't manage to get finance because of the limitations in finance. But overall, our success rate, I think, varies somewhere between 11 and 25%, maybe even 30%. If you want further details on the potential of different sub-programs, you can always contact your national contact point in your country. They know what the success rate of past calls have been in your country and overall, and they can give you guidance on this type of issue. But certainly the nature call under standard action for standard action projects was the most competitive, and that's why under this year's call we have added a requirement for any projects which are asking for very large contributions, so we say over about 5 million EU co-financing, to ensure that they explain very well why the results of their project will be of particular added value and impact for the EU, because we know, of course, when we have large projects, they chew up a chunk of the budget and make it more difficult to finance a larger number of projects. So that's why we ask larger projects to please make sure that this is very clear and this will be taken into account in the evaluation. I've already described the strategic nature projects under this sub-program. We have, as Christian mentioned, technical assistance to prepare the SNAPs. We also have one topic under the PLP call. That was the last thing Christian mentioned. In this case, it's a call related to the further development of the Eurobird portal. You'll find that under the PLP call. Next slide, please. So the second sub-program I will mention is the sub-program on circular economy and quality of life. This is the one which Angelo sort of referred to as everything else. It covers all of the environment topics and policies which are not included specifically in nature and biodiversity or in climate and transition to renewable energy. So this includes water, waste, air, forests, soils, certainly circular economy, you name it, look in there. There's a very wide range of topics included in this call. More or less overall, this sub-program covers the scope under the European Green Deal of the EU Circular Economy Action Plan and the EU Zero Pollution Initiative. But in view of the fact that the very many pieces of legislation involved, look into the call. Similar to the NAT sub-program, we have a SAP call for standard action projects. We're looking for ways to solve environmental problems in real-world conditions. Many of the projects involve demonstration of technologies, but many don't. There are other types of ways of solving environmental problems on the ground that don't involve hard technologies. Christian has mentioned already the strategic integrated projects. There's a call under the Circular Economy and Quality of Life subprogram, targeting the range of plans and programs that were on the slide Christian mentioned. And indeed, there's also a TA call for development of future strategic integrated project applications. Finally, under this subprogram, there's a call for the PLPs. Here, it's two topics. There's one on testing and measuring the feasibility and effectiveness of financial incentives for the take back of small used waste in the electronic waste stream and portable batteries, with the idea of setting up a stakeholder platform. The second topic under PLPs is about bringing life cycle considerations and approaches into buildings policy. And here we're looking towards case studies which can help inform the policy development. So I turn back to Christian for the other sub-programs and the final words.
Sorry, I was muted. We go on with the subprogram Climate Mitigation and Adaptation, which you see here, in fact, contributing to the European Union climate neutral and resilient society, climate mitigation, climate adaptation, climate governance, related governance are the keywords here, in fact. And you see in the blue boxes, in fact, on climate mitigation contributing to the 2030 energy and climate policy, but also as well to the mid-century strategies, in fact, the goals for 2050, you all know that, in fact, also contributing to EU member states' national energy and national climate plans, here in mitigation. On climate adaptations, also here projects that support the implementation of the new EU adaptation strategy and related national implementation. We have under this subprogram some 100 million euros available. We implement them via subs, so action projects and integrated projects that both are used here. We have different deadlines here. You see all the deadlines for the calls on the web page that you know maybe already. We have in fact done some adjustments compared to the version of last year. In particular, I want to refer to the REPowerEU initiative. This has been included now in the text of the climate mitigation adaptation call. Further details on the substance we will hear on day 2, meaning tomorrow, on the climate substrand. I go further to the next subprogram, which is in fact the clean energy transition subprogram. That's new, as I said already before, so only since 2021 we have this subprogram there. We have launched the call last year, and this year, of course, yesterday, this subprogram is there. There's a difference, in fact, compared to the usual or traditional life, let's say, environment, if you can say, or the life landscape. The life funding principles are very much bottom-up. And here, under the clean energy transition, we have very much a top-down call. Pre-described call topics are published. So we have 18 call topics where the Commission, where we say, of course, in agreement and close cooperation with our policy DG, where we say in which areas we want to receive applications. So in fact, a pre-described call, 18 call topics, which you will hear later on. So that's new for the LIFE program as well. And these 18 call topics, which are published, are around 5 intervention areas as shown on this slide here. And on the next slide, if we can go on, you'll see 5 intervention areas, a bit small characters, but I hope you can read it. But I go quickly through that. The first one is, in fact, building national and regional local policy framework, supporting the clean energy transition. Activities there are capacity building at the level of cities, regions, and supporting member states to implement the legislation. You might say it's a bit similar to integrated projects, but these are CSA projects. The second intervention area is accelerating technology rollout, in fact, in a number of key funding topics. You find here work related to building renovation, including construction skills agenda. You find here topics on industry and smart services, or heating and cooling and digitalization, for instance. The third one is attracting private finance for sustainable energy. It's very clear that we cannot finance the energy transition, or we may even call it now energy transformation in Europe. We cannot finance that only with public money. So it's absolutely important that private finance also goes in this area, and attracting private finance is one of the intervention areas here, one of the areas here. So in fact, to develop also concrete, innovative financing schemes in Europe. That's the third one. The fourth one is, in fact, supporting the development for local and regional investment projects. Here we try to mobilize investment in this area in local and regional level offers. Again, here, technical assistance, home renovation in specific regions in transition is the focus point here. And the fifth one, in fact, is about the word citizens, empowering citizens. This is very much centric on consumers. That's that area. This includes work on addressing energy poverty, for instance, but energy vulnerability, but also it's in fact solidifying the concept of energy communities, on renewable communities. So that's very much citizen-centric, this topic here in the clean energy transition subprogram. So the intervention areas, these 5 intervention areas, are translated in the core topics which we just talked about the call for proposal now 22, and we are doing also other areas. I don't specify them now. For instance, concerted actions with member states and other, and also strategic call for tenders are published under this clean energy transition subprogram. The 18 topics are, I would not say similar, but they are rather similar to last year, but there have been some updates. For instance, if I just say what came out last November was the energy first principle also, and this principle has been included in the new core topics. So the policy development is mirrored, in fact, in the development of the core topics of 22. To the next slide, we are coming then to the other action grants again, CSA, coordination and support actions. Here, in fact, the typology is in fact standard type. These are the standard types for set subprogram. Breaking market barrier through for the clean energy transition is the element here to be said. It's very much policy driven. I repeat that. So we have this core topics, prescriptive core topics. And the co-funding rate is high here, and the project duration in comparison with traditional life, I can say it's shorter, between 18 and 36 months. We are not funding here any infrastructure costs. Mainly, it's orientated to labor costs under this CSA. The next slide, and then we come to close it. In fact, keep in touch with us. We have the 30 years of life. Angelo made already a reference to that. We are celebrating that in 2 weeks' time. One question, again, I want to preempt here. It has been said already in the beginning, who is eligible, in fact, for life? Who can apply for life? And I just want to repeat here as an answer, because the answer is very simple. Everyone except natural persons can apply in life. So that's to be kept in mind. So individuals cannot apply for grants here. To close the presentations, the 4 subprograms are very much interlinked, of course. The circular economy aspect is related to, in fact, product design under the clean energy transition subprogram with the no harm principle, which again is in fact impacting on biodiversity and nature, and all that together, in fact, is impacting, or let's say, is helping our climate strategies, in fact, to get climate neutral by 2050. So all that is interlinked here, the 4 programs. Where to find us? You see here CINEA Live. There, it's a good hint. The keywords CINEA and Live. If you search for that, you certainly land on our webpage here in CINEA. Please have a look there. Have a look at the call for proposals. You find the documents there for further details. We want to support you. We want to support you, and we want to work with you on the far-reaching and important developments during the past months and in the coming years for our continent. We have a crisis in Europe, so it's even more important, in fact, that we are really actively working on the areas on the life, on the topics, on the priorities on the life, in particular in the time of a crisis. And to say your work, your ideas, your ambitions, your aspirations, in fact, are even now more relevant, more interesting, more challenging, and also more necessary. Thank you very much for the attention, and we come to the next slot. Back to Giulia, please.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Anne. Of course, this was a broad introduction. The work is for you as applicants. You will all need to read carefully the call documents. But as Anne said, this year call does not differ too much from the previous one. So we are sure you have already some questions. We are seeing them coming in Slido. I know some of you are asking some specific financial questions or also some sub-program specific questions. It's good. We are keeping them warm for later and for tomorrow, and we will dispatch them to the teams of the thematic sessions of the next day. Do not worry, but do not wonder if you will not see them in the order of the screen changing once we open the Q&A again. Please, so keep posting them on Slido, hashtag EU Live 2022. But now take some time to stretch your legs, get a coffee. See you back in about 10 minutes together with more colleagues ready to answer your general questions. And we have a little video for you with the awardees of this Live 22 Awards edition. So something to look at while you relax and type your questions if you have any. Thank you again, Christian and Anne, and see you all back in approximately 10 minutes. Thank you and welcome back. I hope you could take a little break. I'm happy to be here with quite a few of my colleagues from both the life environment side and the life climate and life energy side. It's good to have them here because the questions on the Slido are quite a few. I would ask our back office to show them here so that everybody can see and follow what we will be answering. And as I said before, do not wonder if the order is not the one you're seeing on your mobile. We are taking the question with the most likes, the one that are more general for this session, and we will answer the others in the other section. Okay, so let's get it started. And for the speakers, I will call you when I have a good guess that you might be able to answer the question. If I am in the dark and I don't know, please be free to tell me I'm ready and I will give you the floor. And I will also introduce you as you come. Attila Nagy has a question that everybody likes, even if the answer is very easy, actually. And I know that Zoe Wilders, Senior Project Advisors in CINEA, could help us with that. She is the experienced one in everything that it's tools and application. So Zoe, is there a downloadable version of the online application form for informational purpose, letting us see what we have to introduce, where, etc.? Zoe Wilders?
Okay, thanks a lot, Giulia. Yes, so the short answer is yes. So what I would like to flag here is that when you go to the funding and tender portal and you look for the calls and the topics that are open, you can click on the topic of your choice that is open, and then you will see the entire topic description, and below that you have a heading which is entitled Topic, Conditions and Documents. And when you click on there, you will find core documents for that specific call. You will see the call document, which is very important, and you will also have access to standard application form. So that's a PDF document showing you the application form. You will also see other documents that you will need for the submission of your proposal. And if you go further down, you will see Start Submission. And if you click there on Start Submission, you will be redirected to the the section from where you will have to submit your proposal, and you will have access to the documents that you will have to complete in a zip folder in Word version, and you can look at these documents. This does not oblige you to submit any document, but there you can also have a look, and you can find these documents as well. I hope this answers the question and brings some clarity.
I think so. Zoe, thank you very much. The next question was actually answered by Anne Burrell already during presentation, but I'll give it to her quickly again. For Anne Burrell, what is the average success rate of live proposals?
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned, I mean, it depends a bit on the call. If you consider the number that are financed compared to the total number of evaluations submitted, it ranges from about 11 to a third, say 35% or something like that. This is higher than you find in programs like Horizon, for instance, where it's just a few percent. But of course, it depends very much from the sub-program. If you want more advice on the different sub-programs, which one perhaps is more easy to get financing from, or things like that, we can't give you advice on which sub-program to stake your horse's bets on, but you can talk to your national contact point. In each country, there is a team of national contact points that can give advice to potential applicants and can give you information about, which program perhaps fits best your project and which program perhaps you have a better chance because of the history of success rates.
Thank you, Anne. Now there is an execu, but I will take first the question from David Patterson. Thanks, David. I will ask it to, I think Christian could get this, Christian Strasser.
Yeah.
And so Christian, could you clarify what percentage of cost the grant will cover?
Yeah. Thank you, Giulia. And thank you for the question. I interpret the question it's related to the funding rate, which we touched already in the presentation, but I'm happy to repeat that. The funding rate is the percentage of cost that the grant will cover, in fact, and the funding rate is in life traditionally 60%. This is since long already there. There are some exceptions, in fact, and we have that in the nature sub-program, in fact, 67% for project targeting both priority and not priority habitats and species. We have 75% in this nature sub-program, which are targeting exclusively priority habitats and species. And you have seen we have also the CSA, the coordination and support actions under the Clean Energy Transition sub-program, where we go up to 95%, and some other actions as well, where in fact the funding rate is going up to 95%, meaning 95% of eligible costs will be subsidized, will be reimbursed by the European Commission / CINEA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. There is, so the other with 37 likes from Anita Bakova. I think I could have Anne Burrell starting answering, but maybe other colleagues like Christian or others want to chip in. So can you give examples about replication transfer activities which go beyond the simple dissemination and networking? Anne, what would you say?
Okay, thanks, Giulia. Let me start by commenting on something that's not in the question, and that is that there are two different kinds of requirements for projects. The first is to ensure the sustainability of their own results. So projects anyway need to make sure that what they've done will be maintained in some way in the project site, in the project context. But in addition, indeed, there are requirements to promote the replication and transfer of your project. Now, everyone has to do some of that, but it's obviously gives you an advantage if you actually can show that you're doing it in some kind of sort of exceptional way. Exactly what that means in practice depends very much on your product. On your project. If you have a marketable product, then showing that you have done everything necessary to be able to roll it out on the market and that there's really going to be an uptake might be giving you advantage. And in that regard, I'd add that we do provide some support for close to market projects to work into that direction. But there are many projects that are not producing something that's marketable directly. If, again, sort of more in the private sector, if you are able to take the results of your project and you've already made the contacts and you have done the work to turn your results, whatever they are, into industry standards. If you can build them into industry standards, then you're obviously doing quite a lot towards ensuring the replication and the wider uptake of the results of your project. Some of the projects, for instance, that are land-based, a project that is dealing with land use management, there perhaps you could do something to see how whatever technique you have been developing, whatever you're demonstrating on the good management of certain types of land, if you find a way of integrating it into national or regional guidance, if you find a way of integrating and building it, for instance, into measures that are incorporated into your national or regional program under the Common Agricultural Policy. Those are examples of things where you really are pretty sure that you're going to have a real replication and a broad replication afterwards. So it can be through the market, it can be through industry guidance, it can be through laws and regulations, it can be through having an impact on how financing programs are operated, but of course it depends very much on the individual project. Maybe some of my colleagues have ideas from some of their programs also, their sub-programs.
Anyone who wish to contribute on replication and transfer activities? From anything to add? Feel free to just switch on your mic in case you have anything to add. Otherwise, yes,
I can complement as well. I mean, I'm thinking, if reading this question, I'm thinking on pilot projects. We are also funding, in fact, on the live, and technologies which have been tested, coming out from the lab, but tested then in the pilot project, in fact, and can be then replicated to a larger scale, is as well something which we aim for, in fact. Under these topics, in fact, replication, transfer of activities. Also, I want to make a reference here. We call it close to market projects as well, and we have there also a platform which is called Green Assist, which also helps beneficiaries, in fact, to get closer to the market with the products and the developments they have done during a project. So that's also an aspect of that, which goes clearly, as it said in the question, beyond dissemination and networking activities.
Thank you very much, Christian. I think the ball goes back to Anne for the next question from Lukasz Kujava to Anne Burrell. So what happens if you don't achieve estimated impact indicators? Example, CO2 emission 10% less than you estimated. Do you have to return full partial funding?
Okay, well, my first answer would be, we want every LIFE project to be a success, and we're going to accompany you, help you, cheerlead for you to make sure that you come as close to achieving or even overachieving your wished for objectives and meet all the indicators. Of course, not every project is able to do that. The question is, it depends why you're not able to achieve the impact that you're hoping for. And if it's because you kind of haven't bothered to do some of the things that you said you were going to do, well, yes, then there's probably going to be some kind of financial consequence. On the other hand, if you have diligently done everything that you said you would do and fulfilled everything you said in the grant agreement, but for some kind of reason, it just hasn't worked, and it's not because you haven't tried, it's something beyond your control, well, then it's more likely that we'll say, okay, we know sometimes demonstration projects don't manage, particularly if they're innovative activities. If it's something innovative, you know, you do take a certain risk, and maybe it doesn't pan out completely, but you did the best possible. So in those cases, we're more likely to say, okay, I mean, you did what you should do, you had eligible costs, and we're going to finance them. So it very much depends on the case and the reason for not reaching the objectives that you've set.
Thank you, Anne. And yeah, so there is another question there. I think I would give the floor to Fabio Leone, Head of Sector for Circular Economy and Quality of Life, but I think Zoe could also jump in for the CET details. So the question reads, could you provide statistics for the 2021 call, number of proposals submitted, success rate, which scores does a proposal need to have a chance to be selected? Yeah, crystal ball you need there, but actually, okay. Fabio.
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, we are not fully there in the 2021 call. As you know, we've been just, at least for some of the calls, just informed applicants. So as soon as we finish and we manage to finance and sign the grant agreements with the applicants, a number of press release and information will be submitted. Meanwhile, if you have curiosity or if you want to know more about statistics, then I would suggest you contact your national contact point. We do keep the national contact point in your respective countries updated on the situation of the call and you know, the number of proposals submitted, the success rate, etc., etc.
So I can add maybe a few words on the 2021 call for the Clean Energy Transition sub-program. So we also are in a phase where we finalized evaluation and recently informed applicants. For the CET part, I would like to go back to what I explained to you before. So if you go on the funding and tender portal, there's also a section when you select the topic you're interested in, and that section is entitled Call Update. So if you click there, you will see some interesting stats per topic on the number of proposals that were submitted for each of the 18 topics that were open, also the number of proposals that were above threshold, the budget that was requested, and so on. So please have a look if you have interest.
Thanks, Zoe. Next question. I would actually have the answer, but I'm only the moderator today. Okay, Anne Buril is giving me the go. Are SMEs eligible applicants? Asked by Denitsa Dimitrova. Yes, of course, SMEs are eligible applicants. As Christian said, the only not eligible applicants are physical persons. But Anne Buril, do you want to add anything on this? No need, I think. Let's get it rolling on a more important question. So, I don't have actually a speaker booked for the next one from Elena Ceretta, but I will give it to Anne Buril, which is the difference between LIFE program and others program that finance the same topics, environment, climate change, energy, such as Biodiversity Plus. Anne.
Yeah, I can start answering, but others may want to speak more, perhaps in some other areas. But Biodiversity Plus is a platform that was established under the Horizon Instrument for Research. As I said when I was presenting earlier, generally under LIFE, we don't finance research. So if your project is really more about research and innovation, then you probably want to look to the Horizon program. But of course, there is a bit of a gray zone. Sometimes there's little bits of research or innovation that fit under LIFE projects, or sometimes increasingly the Horizon activities are moving towards demonstration in the field. So there certainly is sometimes some gray area, but I think you need to look at the two different calls. You need to think about where the center of gravity of your project is, if it's really in the research and innovation in the more theoretical sense, or if it's really aiming to tackle a problem, environmental problem on the ground in the context of the implementation and development of EU environment policies, then it's more LIFE. But I would suggest this is another question that you might want to take to your NCPs. You could talk with them about the specific ideas you have, because it's not appropriate for us, because we're going to be evaluating the proposals to give you advice on where to apply. But you could ask them. They can give you that advice. They will give you that advice. And many of them know specifically the different possibilities under different types of programs. Okay, I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think it does. I would like to ask Maria Laguna, Head of Sectors under the Clean Energy Transition part of LIFE, to take the next question. So could you please provide an example of concrete activities for achieving the sustainability of project results? Maria.
Yes. Thanks, Giulia, and good morning, everybody. Just that, so of course, it will depend on the type of project that you are putting forward. The idea here is that the project does not finish drastically at the end of the EU funding, and the activities are sustained in the longer term. So an idea could be also that the consortium put a strategy forward to, for example, ensure that the outcomes and results are taken on board by the relevant stakeholders. So, and that this is really clear at the proposal stage. If I want to give a concrete example, if you look at the live set call on the build-up skills topic, we are asking in one of the scopes to develop or update training interventions for qualification of the building workforce that should deliver the renovations that we need to reach the targets on the clean energy transition. So the building workers basically. But of course, the long-term running of these training schemes and qualification schemes is not covered by the topic, it's not supported by the topic, but the applicants will have to put forward a strategy on how they want to ensure that the schemes will be sustained after the project ends. So for example, linking their strategy to the available sources of funding at the national level or EU level that will ensure and that the training scheme that they have updated or developed does not just finish when the project ends, but it's actually being sustained afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maria. For the back office, we will jump on the climate question that's asked by Jörg Böhmer. And I would ask Bernd Decker to take it. Of course, we will have a climate sub-program session tomorrow, but we thought that this is general enough to be brought here. That's also why we have Bernd with us, Head of Sector for Climate Action within the for the LIFE program in CINEA. Bernd, Jörg is asking, if we go to apply solution for both climate change, adaptation and mitigation, for which focus do you recommend to apply? Where can we expect better chances? That's again the crystal ball, but maybe you have an answer.
Well, thanks, Dirk. Very good question. We often get this kind of question, and of course, we cannot separate climate change adaptation from mitigation in many cases. In terms of your proposal, you should not look at where would you have better chances. You should really look at the prime objectives your proposal would cover, and you would have to make a decision in terms of the impacts, the results you are aiming at, and which one has the higher weight. I would propose to go for this kind of aspect. Of course, when we have certain focusing on certain priorities, the adaptation part may only play a minor role, and the other way around. The same principle would apply, because we often get the question, for example, for nature-based solutions, should it be a proposal submitted under nature or should it be under climate action? The same advice here. Look at your objectives, your prime objectives, your prime key indicators you want to achieve, and this would be the right sub-program to support. We will go into more details on this question also tomorrow, as Giulia already mentioned, in the a specific session on climate action.
Yes, thanks, Bernd. So there is a question. Maybe Anne Burriel can help me with that, but because actually she already replied to most of this question, I will still read it. Could you please explain what type of projects have an exceptional catalytic potential? What does it mean? Does it have a geographical component?
Yes, thanks, Giulia. And to me, this question is the same as the question before about what is considered kind of exceptional work on replication beyond the standard diffusion. So I think the question of what could be exceptional catalytic potential I've more or less answered, but to repeat it, I mean, it depends on the project. And the answer is the same for, does it have a geographical component? As I said, if for instance, your project has done something that can become an industry standard, then there isn't an on the ground geographical component. It's a matter of trying to, or if you show you will be applying it across the industry, hopefully in the EU. I guess that's part of the geographic question, maybe not just in your little region, but across the, if you're going to get it as an industry standard across the EU, that's obviously more than just getting it as an industry standard in your local authority. So in that sense, yes, it's a geographic component, but in terms of the scale. Now, some of the projects which are more land-based, there I would say ultimately there's a geographic component. How much land will actually in the future be covered by a replication or catalysis of your actions? But having that ultimate impact perhaps goes via a non-geographic measure. So getting whatever you've been doing as good practice on the ground incorporated into regulations, into guidance practices, into CAP funds. So ultimately, yes, ultimately what we want is a replication on the ground at a large scale. But how you get there depends on the project, and what you will do directly in the project may or may not have a geographic component in the actual action you'll do.
Thank you very much, Anne. And there I see two questions where I think Zoe Wilders could help us. I don't know in which order to ask it. I will read actually both. One is, can I remove the instructions from the templates? And I know that there is a big no there, but I'll let you give the more exact answers and then maybe also go into the difficult answer to the overview of changes to the Live 22 call in comparison to the Live 2021 call. Zoe, okay. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Giulia. Yes, so I'll start with the instructions. And as Giulia said, it's a big no. You cannot remove the instructions from the template. So I can share you what we have seen so far. So some applicants did it, and clearly what happens is your proposal can be deemed inadmissible by doing so. We are, of course, implementing equal treatment to all applicants. So clearly it wouldn't be fair if some applicants remove a few pages of instructions and others keep them, and they have to respect the same number of pages. So if instructions are removed, clearly they would have to be put back, and you are bound by a page limit. So this means that some other pages at the very end will then not be visible anymore. So you lose basically some elements there. So it's a big no, and you can spread the word clearly inside your future consortia. So you keep all the instructions there. About the template, I really would like to add a few words, because I see some of the questions are hinting at resubmission, which is fully logical. So just be aware about the following. The templates are very largely the same as in 2021, but there are some other, well, there are a few changes on the font size. The page limit number is maybe not necessarily the same. So really look at the funding and tender portal on the 2022 topic you're interested in, and check the data that's in there. So the structure of the proposal will be very largely identical, but as I said, font size, page numbers may not be the same. And I can tell you as well, regarding the changes, I mean, it's a very broad question on the changes between 21 and 22. I can say for CET, well, go really and have a look at the call text, at the topic description, the scope, the objectives we're looking for, because things have evolved. We have new topics as well, so it's not necessarily the same. So it's crucial for you, of course, to check whether your proposal of last year is still fully relevant for the topic. So have a clear look there first. So I'm again talking for CT, but I think for any topic, please go back to the explanations and make sure it's still valid, which probably will be the case for most of the topics, but it's the first thing to look at, I would say.
Indeed, thanks, Zoe. And certainly this is something to look more into details in the specific sessions. You can ask those questions there. Still, I think Christian Strasser wanted to add something on this one.
No,
so Christian?
Confirming, in fact, thank you, confirming what you said. We don't have an overview as such now here. In fact, Sui referred already to the CET, core topics development. There are some changes there, but in a nutshell, I think this was always expressed by Angelo. In fact, we have quite a stable program as well. We are orientating ourselves, of course, on policy developments over the years, yeah, but we are also, let's say, embedded in a multi-annual framework of 4 years, the multi-annual work program as well, which is stable and remains for the 4 years. So in fact, the changes are limited, and we don't have an overview in that sense here. But again, overviews, changes would be mentioned in the specific sessions.
All right, thanks a lot. Actually, I would say also the question from Rita Alcazar about possible recycling and using some of the information uploaded already. It's was answered by Zoe, right? Zoe. And prototype cost versus other cost. Do we have anyone that would like to take this one? And so I'll
I can, if you wish,
thanks,
quickly,
Fabio.
because I
yes.
see. Well,
Barbara De Menapardo, is there a general rough estimate of the optimum share of prototype cost versus other costs, such as personnel, for Fabio Leone?
Simple answer is no. There is no magic recipe, I'm afraid. So don't go trapped into this design according to a scheme, and that you may know that certain personnel need to be a certain percentage and prototype something other, subcontracting. I mean, you have to build up your project around your needs and the output, the objectives, and reaching the targets.
Thank you, Fabio. And please stay with me, because actually the question from Anita Bakova, I think I will give it to you, Fabio. If the project is implemented by a for-profit organization, is there an expectation to be a close-to-market one in order to bring good value for money?
I mean, good value for money is not only close to market. Please, we are an environment program, so our value is the environment and the benefits for the environment and biodiversity, etc., and climate. So no, there are no expectations in that sense. Again, it's your project. You have a certain objective and targets. Hopefully, it's an environment climate targets, and if you can reach it in a sort of design of a close to market project, okay, but if can be reached in other ways, perfectly fine.
Thank you, Fabio. Yes, so there is a question from Emmanuel Weiss, which we put up immediately because we know that Anne needs to leave and we don't have the representative of DG Environment anymore to take it, but Anne offered herself to. Anne from Emmanuel, can third countries receive EU funding? If yes, up to which percentage?
Yes, okay. Thank you for this question. Indeed, and I think there's another related question that I saw somewhere specifically about Turkey. There are two different ways that third countries can be involved in LIFE. The first way is if the country actually associates itself to the program. And Iceland has already associated itself to the program. There are a number of other third countries which have expressed an interest in joining LIFE, and for which the services of the Commission, so DG Environment and the other DGs, are in touch with the authorities in the country about this possible association. The rule is that an entity from any of those countries may participate in an application to the LIFE program. But if at the time we finish the evaluation or are getting ready to sign the grants, if the country has not signed an agreement, so for instance, in the specific case, is the question from Turkey, a Turkish entity could participate in a project application. But if by the middle of next year, when we would be signing applications, finishing the signing grant agreements and finishing the evaluation, Turkey has not signed an agreement, signed and ratified an agreement with the Commission for Participation in LIFE, then that entity would not be able to participate. And then it gets a little more complicated, because if it is the main applicant and basically is planning to run the whole project, then probably we just can't sign it. If they have a more minor role, then we would put the partner in a kind of associated category in which they couldn't get any finance, but they're kind of on hold. And then if the country would join the LIFE program subsequently, we could amend the grant agreement to bring them in. But the basic rule is you can apply, but if your country's not going to be signing soon, there's a real possibility that actually you would not be able to participate. The broader question, though, was about whether entities from third countries can participate. I said that's the first way, if your country joins the LIFE program. The second way is that for certain projects, there is an overriding need for the involvement of third countries and for actions to take place in third countries. The most classical example would be a project working on migratory birds which are important in the EU, which we aim under our environment policy to protect, but which migrate, for instance, to Africa. There, it would be not only reasonable, but necessary to have activities in wherever they go for their winters. And in those cases, those activities in the third country, and possibly with a partner in the third country, would be eligible. But you need to look carefully at the clause on that. But yes, there is that possibility. But for a country which is not associated and where there is not an actual need for involvement of actions in the third country, the answer would be no. I hope that's clear enough. And thank you. I'm going to be leaving you now. I wish you all the very best, and I'm sure that you'll learn lots over the coming sessions, and I wish you all the best of luck, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you very much, Anne. And indeed, we are reaching a close. There is still one question we wish to answer, even though the specificities of this will come on Friday. But I give the floor to Annette Jan, Head of Sector for Clean Energy Transition as well, for the LIFE program. Annette, question from Dita Tesarova. Is there in CT sub-program an obligation to involve minimum 3 partners from 3 eligible countries in all teams?
Thank you, Giulia. Good morning to all, and thank you, Dita, for the very relevant question. Indeed, we have a specific info session on Friday dedicated to the Clean Energy Transition program, but this question, of course, is vital. Yes, LIFE Clean Energy Transition in principle works with the obligation to involve 3 partners from 3 eligible countries. And I think you've asked the question very well, Dita, because it's actually not only 3 partners, but I need also to stem from 3 eligible countries, and where basically there's a bridge back to what Anne was just explaining regarding a possible third country participation. Obviously, you know, in those consortia where the accession of a country is not so visible yet or not so safe yet, you might want to consider as to form a consortium which safeguards you on the 3 absolutely safe eligible countries, and then of course your absolutely invited to expand your consortium. On Friday, we'll explain that most of the teams actually are working with partnerships which go way beyond the minimum obligation of 3 partners. That really depends on the type of theme, the topic, but also the type of activities that you would like to engage in. But I think all of these kind of motivational details, but also project examples will be very nicely presented on Friday. I should insist that also in Live Set, we do actually have a few exceptions of this general rule. There are some topics which actually allow entities from one eligible country to participate. These are topics which are typically very much enshrined into a regional or local context. For example, Maria explained earlier, part of the Build Up Skills initiative, where there is a line of support which supports national road mapping, and where here probably already the name of this direction suggests that a country approach might be more effective. We have the same on, for example, mobilizing investment. Another example would be the setting up of home renovation services, which are also very much embedded in a local and regional context. So we do have actually proposals which work across borders here as well, but it is allowed to also work in a single country. It's very rare that we have a single entity actually, but single countries are in exceptional topics allowed, and the call text would spell out very clearly which exceptions to the general rule of 3 partners from 3 eligible countries would be under this call 22. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette. And this was all for answering the question under this time frame. We know there are other questions there, but having a look into them, some of them are rather basics. Everyone should do his homework. If you read the call document, or even easier, you read our frequently asked questions. The one for CT specifically will also be published soon on the website. You will actually have all those basic answers. So we want to use this time to focus on the most difficult side or aspects, and that's why I want to leave time for the financial session, which is coming basically right now, because there will be, and there are quite a lot of questions. But before giving the floor to Anne, I would really like to thank Christian and Anne, who were with us with the presentation and their answer. And of course, the speakers that joined spontaneously. It was great. Annette, Maria, Fabio, Bernd, Zoe, thank you very much. You will all be busy in the next sessions of day 2 and day 3. So I'll let you go and prepare, and I invite you on the floor, Anne Vermalen, for our financial question. Thank you very much. Anne, great to see you there.
Hello, everybody. So yes, my name is Anne Vermalen, and I'm heading the financial sector dealing with LIFE program for the past 8 years. So today I would like to share with you some tips and some information that might be useful for you for drawing up your budget. I'm not going to go through every slide that I included, because sometimes it's easier to have additional information inside, but I will try to focus on those aspects that, according to me, are important for you to know when you draft your budget, as well as I will make some references to the old program of LIFE when there are some differences. So the next slide will give you some reference documents that I would suggest you to read, maybe not in full, but it contains all the information that you can have for establishing your proposal as well as your budget. Especially here, I would say in the LIFE MGA, the grant agreement on the eligible cost, as well as the annotated grant agreement. And the annotated grant agreement, this is in fact replacing the former Annex 10 that we had in the earlier program. So you will also have a link where you can have some rules on the validation of your legal entity and so on, which might also be very useful, because I know that there are always questions on that. Then when we look to the roles in the grant agreement, so on the next slide, there you have, of course, the coordinator, who is our contact point. And that is the one also who will sign the grant agreement, as well as the other beneficiaries. But they will sign through accession forms, where in the past they gave a mandate to the coordinator. So this is a little change. Then you have the affiliated entities, which are in fact the entities that have a legal or a capital link with the beneficiaries or the coordinator. They don't sign the grant agreement, but they participate under similar conditions as the beneficiaries themselves. However, the beneficiary remains the responsible. And then we have the so-called associated partners, which can also create a little bit confusion if you look at the past LIFE program, because their associated beneficiaries were in fact the normal beneficiaries in the grant agreement. Here, the associated partners, they are those partners that participate at zero cost. So they don't, well, at zero union contribution, I would say. They don't get a contribution, they will have cost, but they will have to bear them themselves. Associated partners, they don't sign the grant agreement. There are then other type of entities that can participate in the project, like subcontractors. Those are the ones, it are service providers to whom, by the beneficiaries, part of the action has been outsourced for implementation. Of course, it's the partner that will remain responsible, but it are the subcontractors that will take care that this part of the action is implemented. We then have also the third parties that can receive a financial support. It is the so-called cascading grants. So beneficiaries can give small grants to entities, to persons that they believe are useful within the implementation of the project. We will come back to that later on. It's also not necessarily applicable for all the different calls. And then you have the in-kind contributors that provide a service for free. This means that because in life, in-kind contributions, they are not eligible cost and they are not eligible on the income side either. But of course, if there are contributors that want to provide something for free, they are, of course, very welcome to do that. Then if we look at the next slide, I just give you a table where there is this kind of summary of all the different type of roles, and it will make it a little bit more easier for you to understand and to have the good overview. So just have a look at that. I just put it here for information purposes. When we go then to the establishment of your budget in the next slide, you will see that you will have to complete two budgets. One is online, it's part of the part A, section 3, where you will have for every beneficiary and affiliated entity, and you will probably also for an associated partner, you will have a line and you will have to put the budget inside for every cost category. Of course, for an associated partner, they this type of entities, they cannot have costs under the direct cost category or indirect cost category, only under the ineligible cost category. Then we have an annex that will need to be completed. It's called a detailed budget table. It will have to be uploaded, and it's also specifying the costs more in detail per cost category, per beneficiary. And here it is where you should have some breakdown, or you will need to explain major cost items, because this is very necessary for understanding by the evaluators if the cost is necessary or not, if it will be eligible or not. Be realistic, of course, when you provide figures. Of course, in these times, either with COVID and then also with the increased prices for materials and for staff, you need to, of course, take this into account when you set your budget, but you don't need to exaggerate either. So then also check the applicability of cost categories in the call document, because as I already mentioned, some type of cost categories are not eligible in all the calls. When we go then to the next slide, there you can see the budget table that has to be filled online, and this is how it will appear in your proposal. I just want to flag one thing, and this is the column that is, or two columns that are there for the personal cost. Normally, you should have 3 columns, but here in the first column, the personal cost without volunteers, you will also have all the costs related to SME owners next to the normal actual cost for employees and so on. And then you have a column for the volunteers. So this budget table should be completed by you as much as possible. There is also the income side. The income side will not be put into your grant agreement, but it is for us to understand better how you will finance your part of the cost. So besides the EU contribution. So it would be good if you can also fill that part. Then if we go to the next slide, we will dive a little bit into the detailed budget table, where we will ask you to submit more details on the cost that you will incur or that you think you will incur. So we will here have, it's a bit different compared, I need to say, compared to the previous call, the one from 2021. We have developed it or modified it a little bit to make it for us also easier to do the evaluation. And you will have here the staff allocation effort table that needs to be completed, of course, for all the participants in the project, not for subcontractors and so, but at least for the beneficiaries, affiliated entities. You might also include the associated partners, but I don't think that is obligatory. Then make sure that you don't add tabs to this Excel, but or to this document, but that you only include for example, another column, if you have more work packages, you need to list all the beneficiaries with their name, also the affiliated entities, and you need to indicate in bold who is the leader of the work package. And then the total person months should appear in the last column. So it will be then the sum of the person months that will be used by each of the beneficiaries in the work packages. When you go then to the next slide, there you will have a breakdown of the costs in the different type of categories of staff. This is also needed for us to make it clear that, for example, the SME owners, they are a separate category and they use unit cost as well as the volunteers. And we would like to be sure if you use them that, or if you are an SME, that it is likely that you could use them. So it provides us with additional information to evaluate your proposal correctly and to make sure that later on everything that is needed is also in the grant agreement. Then if we go to the next slide, there you will see the part on the subcontracting. This needs to be encoded very detailed because we need to have a real justification on the cost. You don't need to specify the name of the subcontractor. It's more important that you specify the type of service that you want to outsource, and you need to do this also per partner, per affiliate for those entities that then will receive an EU contribution. You also have to put the work package here. If you would go over 30% compared to the total budget, you will need to provide a justification because, of course, subcontracting should be a limited part of the action, and we would normally believe that you would have partners in the consortium that can carry out the actions or can do the implementation themselves. So normally you should not go for subcontractors to complete the entire project. So therefore it is limited, and if you go over, please specify. The other direct costs, you will see that you will have this little table. You will have to make it or complete it for every beneficiary, every affiliate in your consortium. Here you can group cost as well when they are minor cost items and just have a small justification there. But for the more major and important items that you will list, you really need to make sure that there is sufficient explanation or sometimes a breakdown that we can understand what it is and how it is composed. So If you have to make the lines bigger, because sometimes this is needed, or mostly in all cases, make sure that when you have the print version of this document that you can read everything, because if you upload your proposal, it will for us be converted in a PDF. We might not be able to read everything that is there. So this might be something to take into account. Then on the next slide, I provide you with a split between, or what is the difference between subcontracting and purchase cost for services, because the line is often, well, there is often a gray area between the two, but as I said, for subcontracting is really outsourcing part of an action. It's really making a supplier of services or service provider responsible to do part of your work under the project. Of course, you remain responsible as beneficiary. Yeah? This is clear. But then, what are then the different type of services that you can purchase if it would not be subcontracting? This is, for example, establishing the audit certificate for a financial statement, do translations, publication of brochures. It can also be transportation costs that you contract. It might be, for example, if you contract the rooms for a meeting or the catering for a meeting, that this is then a service. But however, when, for example, you contract the entire event and the organization of an entire event, then it would be subcontracting. So it's just to make a bit of the distinction. For example, also, if you would have a contract for carrying out energy audits in the frame of the project on buildings, then we would believe this is more like a subcontracting activity. If you just hire an IPR consultant or an IT consultant to help you or to give some advice, or then it is more under the service category. In case of doubt, just put it under subcontracting. So that is the most safest solution, because there it is limited, and then you might need to give a justification. But if it's not there, and then later on we might need to move it, then it can create problems. So in case of doubt, put it with the subcontracting. The next slide will give you some general things for putting together the project budget. Of course, first of all, check your call document, because that contains the eligible and the ineligible cost. Everything should be encoded in euro. The flat rate on the direct costs, except on volunteer cost and land purchase, is 7%. So compared to the previous LIFE program, you could also have less. Here it is 7%, except, of course, for entities that have an operating grant with the EU. It is a grant that finances their operating costs. So the ones who have such a grant, they will know. In that case, normally you cannot have the flat rate of 7%, and you should indicate, you can change the amount and you should indicate 0, except, for example, like operating grants, they are yearly grants, and it might be that in future you don't get such a grant anymore. It's not because you have it now or maybe next year that you will have it over, that you will have it in future. So in that case, you could still have, of course, indirect cost. You can put in the amount, because you will have to then adjust it. You should then make an estimation on how much it will be, but of course not more than 7%. And it might also be that if, for example, your accounting system is a cost accounting system with project codes and so on, and if everything is very detailed there and costs are split, also the type of operating cost of your organization, like the water, the electricity, and so on, if this is split over all the projects, then it might still be possible to have indirect cost in our project. So, but then you need to be able to demonstrate that you have such an accounting system, and that the cost has not yet been declared elsewhere in full. We also work with unit costs, and for the daily rates for SME owners and for volunteers, you can find them in Annex 2A of the grant agreement. So there you can see what is it's often linked to a country, and for SME owners, in fact, there is a daily rate, and this has to be multiplied with a coefficient that you can find under the work program of the Marie Curie actions. This is in the Horizon Europe, the general work program. There you have a split between the different types, and then you take the Marie Curie one, and at the end of this work program you will find the coefficients per country, and that you will then have to multiply your rate with. The rate is the same for everybody, but then the coefficient may make it a little bit more adapted to the country. Then in the next slide, you will have an overview of the maximum EU funding for the eligible cost. I'm not going into the percentages. You see it's between 60, in rare cases, maybe 100%, but mostly between 60 and 95%. So you will have to consult your call document for that. If we then move to the next slide, then there I can tell you that in your budget, the system itself will calculate a theoretical maximum amount of the EU funding that you can request, but of course you can request less. And in some cases you will do this because you will already know that you will have income of the project, that you might have another third-party co-financing part of your project, and or yourself, you want to contribute more than the minimum that we would require. So this is the difference with what we would maximum pay as EU contribution. So this you will have to put an amount, and then it will be in the end the EU or the agency who will define the maximum grant amount that we will decide for your grant. Normally it is the requested EU funding by you, but it might also be lower. For example, if we detect a lot of ineligible costs in your proposal, and if they are not taken out, so we will then have to take them out ourselves. So in the next slides, I will just have the eligible cost overview, the general criteria. I'm not going into this because this is the same over the previous program as well. So I think that everybody already participated will know it, and otherwise it's clearly specified here on the slide. So have a good read of that then. In the next slide, we will have a little bit more information on the unit cost and flat rate and what is then eligible, because of course they need to be declared under the correct budget category. This is then in the staff cost area or the indirect cost. You will see that they will also have to relate to the period of the action, and they need to be necessary for the implementation of the action, especially the unit cost. You will need to make sure that they are identifiable and verifiable, in the sense that, for example, if it concerns volunteers or SME owners, you will need to keep track of the days that they have worked. And this should be either in timesheets, or for volunteers, you may have another type of list, but you will need to be able to prove the units that are used in order to use the unit rate. So we will not ask this proof immediately when you submit your reporting, but it can be asked afterwards. If we go to the next slide, then we will come to the personal cost. Here you will see that there are 5 types of personnel. The first 3 are actual costs that will be declared in your reporting and for which you will need to estimate the cost now. So it is for the employees, for natural persons, and for the seconded persons. Normally this is also the same as it was in the past, so nothing specific there. Now for life, we have SME owners and natural persons, the so-called sole traders, which become eligible for their cost, and they will use then the unit cost if they work. And then the volunteers, we already had them in the call 2020 of the previous program as well, so they will still be eligible as well. Then in the next slide, we will see how you need to budget your cost. So for the cost of employees, it's very easy. You will have to calculate an average annual salary cost of an employee. So you will have to make an estimation what this would be, and then divide it by 12. So you have then the monthly salary cost, and then you divide it by the person months. Then you multiply it with person months on the project. So then you will have the project cost for that particular employee. If you work with natural persons or seconded personnel, and the natural persons in this sense is a person you sign as a beneficiary immediately a contract with. It can be a consultant, but it cannot be hired through another company. So it is only when you sign a contract directly with the natural person. Otherwise, it might be that the cost can fit under subcontracting, or in most cases, more likely under the provision, the purchasing of services. And then, of course, you will have to see what is the cost in that contract. So often it will be a daily rate or an hourly rate, and then you will have to budget it based on that rate, or the estimation of what the rate could be. For the secondment, of course, you will need to repay to the entity that that seconds the person to you. You will probably need to pay the salary cost to that entity, and that is then, of course, the cost that will go into your budget. Then in the next slide, we will show you the costs for SME owners and then the volunteers as well. So as said, we have unit cost, and they are defined in the Annex 2A of the grant agreement. So you can consult it. It's one of these links that is on the first slide. You can go there. And then for the SME owners, I already mentioned that they have one daily rate. It's 282.22 euros, and it will have to be multiplied with the country-specific correction coefficient that you will find under the Marie Curie work program. So you will have to go and see there. It's at the end of the work program, so you will find all the tables there. Then for the volunteers, they have also, of course, a unit cost. It's also a unit cost per day. And the total that you can put as costs in the project budget is 50% of the total project cost. So it cannot be more. And the maximum EU contribution that you can have is maximum the total eligible cost without volunteers. So there are some limitations, and you need to be careful when you plan things, because this will be automatically also, when you report later on, the maximum amounts that you can charge for volunteers. Then if we go to the next slide, there is nothing new. Subcontracting, same as in the past. For the being eligible, you will have the general eligibility conditions like we have for all the cost categories. Here, of course, you have procurement rules that you will have to apply. The ones that you use in your own organization is also the same for other things that you purchase in the frame of the project. And they need, of course, to demonstrate best value for money, and there should not be a conflict of interest. So you cannot just give a contract to your brother that lives on the corner of the street. So you will need to justify this through a procedure, of course, in line with your own rules. Of course, for the public entities, they have public procurement, so for them it should be clear how they have to purchase goods and services. And then, as I mentioned, subcontracting is limited. It's a limited part of the action. And it can be more than the 30% that we have set if it is justified. And then often it's linked to certain calls where this is more frequent than in other parts. Then the purchase costs, we already went into it, but it's the next slide. So you will have the travel and subsistence, and there, of course, the cost, it's in line with your usual practices. If you reimburse travel costs to your staff, you will have to charge them in line with those procedures. And then I would like to focus a bit on the equipment, because here in life we have two options. We have the option where you have the depreciation of the cost, which will mostly be there for the set calls. And then we have the other option where we have the full cost that can be charged, but only if you are in line with the rules under the durability clause in Annex 5 of the grant agreement. For the other calls, for the SAP, it's more the SAP and SNAP and the SIP. So there you can charge the full cost. For the depreciation, of course, you can only include costs that are actually incurred or that will be actually incurred for the project. This is the depreciation cost of the equipment that you have purchased. And then, of course, only the portion of the cost that corresponds to the rate that you use it in the project. You can also have, of course, cost of renting or leasing, but then only if it doesn't exceed the depreciation cost, because it should also be less costly than what you could have if you would buy it yourself. Then the next slide will go more into the full cost option. And this is, of course, then you need to comply with the durability clause. If not, you will need to list your equipment in the grant agreement, and you will have to identify that equipment in this detailed budget table. So you need to make sure that it is clear that you will need to depreciate it. So it's best maybe to have then two lines, one with the depreciated and one maybe for the ones that fall under the full cost case. So here the difference is that only equipment and then it includes also infrastructure and other assets that are under a fixed asset account in your accounting. They need to be purchased specifically for the action. So you cannot use them for anything else, or they should not be used for anything else. And you will need to commit to use and maintain them after the end of the project and for the activities pursuing the projects or the actions objectives, of course. This will have to be done for at least 5 years after the end of the action or until the end of the economic lifespan of your equipment, which is then by then fully depreciated. So whatever is the earliest, it will count. Then if we go to the next slide, then you will just have the other goods, works and services there also. It's the same as for subcontracting. You will need to purchase this in line with your normal procurement procedures. Different type of costs here. I already went into it before, but you will have consumables, supplies, promotion material, dissemination, translations, publications, but you can also have certificates and financial guarantees, but then only when they are required under the grant agreement. For example, if the grant agreement doesn't request you to submit a financial certificate, certificate on the financial statements, the so-called audits report, because as of the new LIFE program, the threshold is 500,000 euro. In the past, we had 750,000, now it's 500, and it's per beneficiary. EU contribution. So if it's not required under the grant agreement, then you cannot and charge this cost. If it is, then you should take it into account in your budget. So, and it's per participant. Then if we go to the next slide, then we have another interesting category which has specific rules and which you may want to take into account, even if it's not so frequently used. It's very important that you understand that conditions on how you will provide this financial support to third parties, it's like it can be a price or it can be in the form of a cascading grant, so that you give yourself a grant to an entity. The conditions need to be set out in Annex 1. So, of course, it should then be awarded according to objective and transparent selection procedures. And you will have to have them available because otherwise your cost in the end might be considered ineligible. It can happen that in some cases, you are not able to define this upfront because it is only coming later in the project, and there is no possibility to define it upfront because of activities that you need to do first. Then it could also be a deliverable later on. That is a possibility that we can envisage, but this should be an exception. So we will ask you, where possible, to already set everything out in the grant agreement before, so under the future Annex 1, so in the description of your project. If we go to the next slide, we will see more in particular what needs to be there then for the Annex 1. What are the conditions? Of course, you will know that there is a limitation. I think it's 100,000 euro for the project and 20,000 euro maximum per third party where you can give a grant to. But then for grants, you will need to specify what type of amount that you will give to a third party, or the criteria for calculating the amount. How will you set the amount? What type of activities are qualified for this financial support, and what type of persons or categories of persons could receive it? And then you will need to define the criteria and the procedures for giving this financial support. So even if you cannot be very elaborative on it in your proposal, just make sure that there is something that makes us understand how you are going to do this. Then prizes. There you will need to define the eligibility and the award criteria. It's prizes in money, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. Prizes in money, not if you want to give a prize, for example, you have a project that involves schools and you want to give a prize a bicycle, then that is not, this is not here. The bicycle would fall under the purchase costs of goods, so not here. Then you will also have to identify what would be the amount of the price and what would be the payment arrangements. How will you then pay this price to the entity that would win it? If we go then to the next category, it's land purchase. Here I'm going to be very brief because it's almost, it's very rarely used. So I would say that the future beneficiaries who would want to use this type of cost really read very thoroughly all the conditions, because there is there is a huge amount of information. I will not go into it now, but really I would suggest that you consult the grant agreement on that to be sure that it qualifies. And then of course this land purchase, it also includes a long-term lease of land and one-off compensations for land use rights. So have a look if you think that your project would benefit from purchasing land. Then the next slide, and then another one, and then another one. So next slide. I'm not going to go into this, and then still another one. Sorry, I put them on. Yes, we are arriving with the indirect cost. So as I said, it is a flat rate of 7%. It doesn't take into account the volunteer cost and the land purchase cost. And as I mentioned, those that have an operating grant, they might not be eligible to claim it, or not the full part. So then we can go to the ineligible cost in the next slide. There also nothing has changed compared to the past. I think it's all still the same. Most frequently errors that we see is that that dividends are charged to calculate the staff cost. This is not possible. This is not a cost. Then also deductible or refundable VAT. From time to time, this has been included and it should go out. And in-kind contributions, as I already mentioned, they are not eligible for life. So in the next slide, we then have some three other items which I would like to flag. This is the cost or contributions that are declared under other EU grants. So if you already receive a grant for a specific cost, you cannot have the cost paid twice by the EU. It doesn't only concern money that we will give for your grant. It also concerns if you will get money from a member state or a non-EU country or other bodies implementing the EU budget. If they give EU money, you can have it if you got it already through one of these other entities. Then costs or contributions for staff of national, regional or local administrations, so public civil servants, in fact. Normally we don't pay the cost for them unless it is specifically for the project and it is not part of the administration's normal activities. Then, of course, this cost can be charged if these employees or civil servants participate in the project. And then, of course, costs or contributions, and then I'm referring to travel and subsistence costs for staff or representatives of the EU's institutions, bodies or agencies that come to visit you. They are also not an eligible cost. And I think that here my presentation is concluded. So I hope it was useful for you. And I suspect that there are many questions. But maybe not. After you had the presentation, maybe it's no longer needed.
Thank you so much, Anne. I hope potential applicants really appreciate the effort. And as you see, Anne did not go into the details of each slide, but those slides are there for you. We will upload them on the website, so you can click on the link, and that's extra information that you can have in case of need. So now we start the last question and answer session of the day. There are quite a few financial questions, but strangely enough, not as much as in the past. It means potential applicants are learning and your presentation are so clear and that there are not so many questions. In any case, we will keep the time. We will really close at 12:30. And for you to know, we do have a few colleagues in the background in case of need for a question, in case you want their support, if it's more operational, there is still Fabio Leone with us. And if you need some further financial support, Lorenzina Bruno will also be there. But now let's go to the question. And for those that still want to ask questions, you can still try your luck. Slido.com, EU Live 22 is the hashtag. Do remember that you do have also the national contact points as reference, and that we will have the bilateral meetings among yourself as applicants to network, but also with us CINEA experts. So there are various occasions when you can ask your question. And of course, the FAQ on the websites are the place to go. And now we go to the question from Valentina Immediato. How can the remaining 40% funding of the project be covered?
Well, I think I already had it in my presentation. So normally it is either own contribution from the entity that participates. You can have it from third parties that want to finance part of your project, or it can also be through income that you generate through the project. But I know that there are not many projects like that. You cannot use in-kind contributions. I mean, of course, you can have in-kind contributors helping you with certain things, but you cannot charge a cost, and we will not take it into account from the income side as co-financing from your side.
Thank you, Anne. Next question from Lucas. One of the main objectives of an action is to build a prototype installation. Can you sell such installation after the action ends?
Well, we don't have anymore, like in the past, a specific category as prototype. Everything is now included under either, well, the equipment section. And there, of course, if it goes into the assets, then it depends. If you can apply the durability clause, if it's applicable for your call, of course, then the prototype might still be financed completely if it is an asset in the accounting. If you cannot comply with this rule, or if it's not applicable, then you will still have the depreciation that will have to be done. Of course, if it's not in your assets, then you will not have to put it under the equipment side. I would say that if you want to sell it later on, then you will probably not comply with the durability clause unless this entity will still use it for the same thing for this project. And at that point, of course, they will have to sign the same statement, or you will need to make sure that they will follow the same rules, because if they don't, we might come and request you the money back. So because then you can only have the depreciated amount. So you will have to think about that first, what you want to do, and if it's possible, the full cost, or if you need to depreciate if it is needed for your accounts.
Thank you, Anne. A question from Joanna. Do project partners have to secure their financial contribution or only the main beneficiary? Does the contribution have to be divided equally among partners?
Well, in any case, you will sign a consortium agreement in the budget, and also when you declare cost. The maximum union or EU contribution that every partner can get for his cost is fixed at the rate that is applicable to your call. So if it's 60%, it's maximum 60%. If, for example, a beneficiary wants to contribute more or wants to help to pay the costs of another beneficiary, you can do this, but it's outside the budget tables, outside the project. It's then you can put this in your consortium agreement. So of course you need to make sure that before you sign your grant, that you're able to co-finance yourself the remaining part. And this can then be either, as I mentioned, through income of the project, if you have it, or through the help of other beneficiaries, but is then outside through a third party that finances this part of the cost, or yourself. These are the possibilities, and it's not necessarily equally among partners. So every partner can decide. The system will calculate the maximum amount of the EU grant per beneficiary, which is linked to this. If it's 60%, it's maximum 60% of your eligible cost. And then you can still decide yourself how much you will ask. So depending on if you have third parties coming in or that will finance part, or if you have income of the project. So that is up to you to decide. So that it's not necessarily equally.
No, indeed. Thanks, Anne. Next question from Cohen. What is the minimum budget for a proposal?
Well, I don't know if there is a minimum budget for a proposal, but I know that some call documents, they define some, they give an idea on what is the average budget that is normally there. So I'm not entirely sure if there have been maximum defined. This may be one of the other colleagues, if they want, they can jump in, if they know that for their calls this would be applicable. But as far as I know, there is no minimum budget set. So
indeed, we just give some orientation, I think, but Fabio Leone might follow up on this. Fabio, just switch on your camera if you can, thanks.
Yeah, quickly, there is no minimum. I mean, in general, I'm speaking, for example, for the circular economy and quality of life. There is not really a minimum. There's not really a maximum. So there are rather very large projects being financed in the past, a very rather small project being financed in the past. Always think that in the back, we are an implementing instrument. There is impacts that plays a certain role. So a critical mass and an European added value. So if your project, even if it's small, has a considerable impact and makes sense in terms of the European added value, perfectly fine. If you need to go big to be able to do that, also fine. There is no technical limit to it. I think as a suggestion, you can go to you can Google Life Project Database, and then you connect to the project database that we've been financed since 1992, and you will get an overview. You just choose the more recent ones, an overview of what kind of size of projects we've been financing in the past.
Yes, indeed. And you will see that the size can vary a lot.
Yeah.
So we go to the question from Leonore, and that's definitely back for Anne. Can two entities that have a legal capital link both be beneficiaries, or must one entity be a beneficiary and the other an affiliated entity?
No, they can both be beneficiaries. So it is a choice. And I would say that if they both have a big stake in the project and they deliver quite a lot of tasks, then it's probably better that they work as beneficiaries. But this is, of course, this is to be discussed within the consortium and between the beneficiary and the affiliate.
Yes, indeed, Anne. But as a project advisor, I would also prefer them both to be beneficiaries, if I can express my little opinion. Valentina Mediato, She's writing a few questions, and next is also from her, and it's definitely for Anne. The 40% has to be covered by own contribution or third-party co-financers, in-kind contribution or project income, right? Is regional or national funding eligible?
Okay, I think I already answered the question in the previous questions and also during the presentation. So, of course, yes, co-funding is either through own contribution, third-party co-financers, or project income, but not in-kind contributions. This is out. It can be regional or national funding as long as they don't come from EU budget. So this is possible.
Yes, thanks. And the next question still from Valentina. Is an infrastructure necessary for the operation testing of a prototype installation an eligible cost for funding? Thank you.
It's already somewhere in the question. If it's necessary, it's possible. But of course, you always need to see if it's value for money, because sometimes maybe renting an infrastructure, or it might be how shall I say, more cost efficient. So you will need to see what is the appropriate way of doing things and whether it's needed, and also if it's really needed for the project alone, or if you want to use it for other things. So you may want to consider that. But from a financial point of view, for sure it can be eligible. It's more, I think, the need for the project and how it is set up that is probably defining whether you will be able to claim it or not.
Yes, it gets into the technical side of the project then. Daily rates, budget. Should we account the official live daily rates or should we take the national daily rates?
I've not entirely understood if we are talking about staff costs or if we are, for example, talking about exchange rates or anything. But the rates, I have explained how you should calculate them. So for the budget, you will have to use the staff cost or the salary cost as you have them in your organization for that particular person, and then of course you will take into account inflation, and you will then divide it by 12 to have the monthly rate, and then you multiply it with the number of person months that this person is going to work, and then you add it up for all the persons. So it is the rate that you would pay yourself to this person. So it is, it's not really the official live daily rate, and it's not the national daily rate, it's your rate. So it's, I'm not sure if the question, if I understand it correctly, so maybe you want to do a follow-up question and to specify better, so we can maybe look at that as well. So
yes, I think it might be that it was travel daily, but
okay, of course, if it's travel, there we also already mentioned that you should take the rates that you have internally according to your own rules. So you should then reimburse based on what is applicable in your organization. So if you're normally just reimbursing the cost of travel to the employee, then it's just the reimbursement. If you have daily rates fixed for if people go on mission and so on, and you have a specific rate, a flat rate for example, hotel and for subsistence cost, then you can use that, but it should be in line with your own rules.
Yes. The next one from Zaira Ambu. I find it interesting. So is it considered negatively to have third parties receiving in-kind contribution for specific activities, or shall we include all the participants as partners?
I have to say also that I don't really understand, is it considered negatively to have third parties receiving in-kind contributions? Because third parties, this means that we would give in-kind contributions, or that a project would give in-kind contributions for a specific activity, or is it the other way around, that we would, that you would get the in-kind contribution? I'm not entirely sure. So, but if you get in-kind contributions, if they are free of charge, of course you can use them for the project, but you cannot claim them as a cost. If we are talking here about the financial support to third parties, then it's of course something else, and it's not something negative. If it's needed for the project, of course, then it can just contribute to it. So negative, no. Not
exactly,
in any case.
yes. But it should be more precise to make us able to evaluate, basically, because from this question, it's...
no, it's a little bit difficult to understand.
Yes. Giulia Cecchinato is asking, what are the financial guidelines for the new programming period 2021-2027? Is the Annex 10 still available? Where is possible to find this information?
Well, for sure, the Annex 10 is no longer available because the grant agreement is, well, in big terms, different from what we used in the past. So I already had on the first page of the slides the links, and you will find the annotated grant agreement. And this, it's not yet fully, it's a draft still, but you will find there already a lot of information on the different type of cost and explanations. It is set up not only for the LIFE program, it's set up for all programs that are dealing with this master grant agreement that we have now in place. So you will sometimes see also that certain options are not available for LIFE and others they are, well, they're not available for others. So, but there you can find a lot of information, and I would certainly recommend you to go and have a look.
Yes, indeed. Thanks. Lukas is asking, is infrastructure such as building a dedicated production hall necessary for operation test of a prototype installation are cost eligible for funding? I think that's a bit like the answer you gave before, Anne.
Yes, yes, it's the same. So of course, infrastructure is eligible for as far as it's needed for the project, and you can justify it. So
yeah, there is not much to add. I don't know if Fabio wants to jump in, because of course from the technical evaluation one, we would really put this into question, and we want to see in the application why this is so needed, right, Fabio?
Exactly, Giulia. I mean, if we remove the brackets from the text, it's perfectly fine, it's eligible, but as soon as you put inside certain elements like building, this means large cost. And then this means that you have to justify it. Is it the output of the project justifying that cost? So it's a risky business if you start to push in cost, which makes your business case or your project case weaker, because then the assessment will be much going through what we get, what we pay. And yeah, it's I'm afraid it's very specific to the context of the project, to the output of the project, to the European added value of the project. So it's eligible, but watch out to have a proportional distribution of cost, not that the infrastructure is 90% of the cost. So we're paying just for the infrastructure.
Yes, thanks, Fabio. And we still have approximately 10 minutes to answer question. I hope, Anne, you can hold on. To the next one, I even have the answer, but I'll let you answer again. Can co-finance be provided in kind?
No.
Exactly. Big no. And you have this answer in various points of the documents for the application. So from Paula Alexandra Campos, is there a limit on personal cost for public entities?
The cost of personal from public entities, I already mentioned, if they are specifically for the project and it's not related to the daily activities that they have to do within this public entity. So then, of course, this cost can be eligible. And it's the same as for other costs, not only for public entities, but also for private entities. If the cost is necessary for the project, it's eligible.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Then we go to the next one. If an SME owner has a salary, personal cost should be estimated with daily rate or with actual cost?
Well, if you have actual costs, you need to use the actual cost. It's only the unit costs are only there to compensate SME owners or natural persons that don't get a salary. So they will then have to use the unit cost. But if you have a salary and this is in your accounting system, so we're not talking about dividends and so on, then of course you will have to charge them using the actual cost.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to sneeze, so I switched it off. I think we have Lucas coming back with a sufficient explanation for justification of cost mean. How many words sentences is considered sufficient. I don't think it's a matter of how many words, but of the content. But
yes, the description should be clear enough for us to judge during the evaluation whether this cost is needed or not, and to give a bit of background. But of course, you don't need to write a book. It's just summarizing the needs. So what it is and what, well, that it's clear that it's needed for the project. So
indeed,
yeah.
A good rule of thumb we used to give in the past: when you are ready with your application, please let someone else who didn't write it read it and find out if she understands it. Of course, someone that has a technical knowledge, but for such a justification, that's the ideal thing to do, I think. Just not be alone, but check it. It must be reasonable. And if it's not, if we don't understand it, then yeah, it's difficult, but it's not about number of words. And don't write a book, please. Otherwise, you have no space for the rest. Okay, so still Lucas, the cost of creating a project website is a direct cost of ordering a service or a subcontracting cost. What about ordering technical components of prototype? And
well, I think the technical components of a prototype, they're in the equipment. So
yes.
That is not a service. For cost of creating a project website, I'm not entirely sure if we still recommend project websites as such, or that it should be under the website of the beneficiary. I'm not entirely sure, but if you would set up a project website, and then I would say it's a subcontracting cost. If it's just maintenance of things, just adding things of a website that is already existing, then I would rather see it as a service.
Yes, and thanks, Anne, for mentioning this. I can add a little bit on the project website. We are not asking anymore since a while to really have a project website. We need the project to be present on the web. If your organization, your institution, or previous project of yours had already a website, there is no need to create a brand new one. Actually, in communication terms, it's much better to use the one that has already a solid presence on the web and it's followed, and you can create a page dedicated to your project on their already existing website, and the cost related to it will be eligible. Sorry, Anne, for jumping into this. So from Lieve is a question on subcontracting. Subcontracting more than 30% extra explanation, 30% of the total budget, or 30% of the partner who asks for the subcontracting?
We look at it from a total budget perspective, so not necessarily per partner.
Indeed, and what I remember, do not subcontract to your brother who lives on the other side of the street if there are no reasons, as Anne said before. I pin it down because it was a nice way to frame also subcontracting. We have Maurizio Dalferro asking non-partner financial contribution to the project. How does it work, please?
So this means probably the third parties that would contribute. So I know, for example, in Poland, they have the Polish National Fund that is contributing to projects, but it might also be private entities that contribute, or the co-financing can come from any third party that is interested to finance the project. You just need to take it into account. So because of course, if you know you will get money and you're sure to get money, I think that we would like you to report it, and that then this entity that would contribute will also sign some declaration.
Yes, and what I would add here is that if you might find other projects who did this before, your national contact point might direct you to them, so you can actually exchange experience with others and find out how it worked for them. That can help you, maybe, Maurizio, to think about your situation as well.
Maybe I should add,
yes.
Maybe I should just add that I think that this signature of a declaration, that this might depend call by call. So it's maybe not for all the calls like that.
True. Yes, thanks. So next question. Yes, a small association could be the coordinator, even if the annual budget of the association is very small.
Well, normally what we will do for all the coordinators that are private entities, we will do a so-called financial capacity check. So we will see if you pass that check, then we don't have any worries, because of course we want to make sure that the EU funding that we provide is not going to entities that might go bankrupt or so in the near future. So we will do some checks. Based on that, we will, if everything is fine, then you will not get any comments on that. If we would see, based on the ratios, the financial ratios that we use to do these checks, we see that, for example, you're not so financially viable to carry this project, and we might recommend that another partner takes over, or that you submit a guarantee, or that you work without pre-financing. There can be many different options. So you really need to think first if you can carry the project. That is the main criteria. So you need to reflect on this. And
Yes.
if you have the capacity, of course, to be coordinator.
Yes, it is indeed a heavy job, actually. So think about it before you go for it. Do you have, let me just have a look at the clock. We have 3 minutes left, so I would say we will take 3-4 more questions, and then we'll have to leave the others, but I'm happy that we replied to most questions with the highest number of likes. So now we are going into nitty-gritty question of specific applicants. Still, let's use these 3 minutes well. So, there is a new question coming in. I think I know why, because it's always a relevant question. I know Anna's the answer. What about 2% rule? Public organization does no longer exist.
No, it does no longer exist for the new program. So I think we're all happy with that.
Yes, reason to celebrate there. Do you have an example of practical budget, a kind of study case?
Not really, but maybe you can consult one of your, if you want to put a project proposal in, and maybe one of the other consortium partners would have an example. Maybe they could share it, or they can provide you with some help, or maybe other projects that you may know, they might be able to share one, but I don't have an example like that. So.
Yes, thanks. Next 2 questions, and then we close. From Roberto Vanucci: if a partnership will develop an effective demo, who will own the system? For example, a business model, software, right to sell the service at the end of. Okay. Will they have the right to sell the service at the end of the project? The one that will own the system.
Well, I assume yes. I think it might be then one of these close to market projects.
Yes,
if I understand well. So
that would be my interpretation as well.
And who will own the system is, of course, the one who has created it. So it will, in any case, it will not be CINEA. It will be the consortium.
And I don't know if Fabio wants to add something on this, but in any case, this is something that you will be able to discuss with your project advisor through the development of the project and find the most suitable solution for all partners. Fabio, anything to add?
Yes, well, always think about the durability clause in case you are charging the full cost of this development. It's very specific. I think Anne already answered along the lines.
Oh.
And also maybe think, I see a lot of can I sell, prototype. Think about the strong elements that we do assess about the sustainability of the project, which means to ensure that the project is not an end in itself. So you finish the contract and you close the book. But sustainability is to continue working on that for the results are used by someone else, by you, and after the project, not that we are running to another project the next year to keep going. This is not the idea. It's also best use of money.
Yes, thanks. We are going to take the very last question, and they all have just 2 likes. I don't know, Anne, if you want to pick one that you think it's more relevant.
Yeah, maybe quickly to say that the co-funding rate for us, EU funding rate is the one in the call. So beneficiaries cannot reduce it. They can only ask less funding. But if you want to co-finance also costs of another partner, it might be better to ask the maximum and then just co-fund outside the project the other partner. So through the consortium agreement. Voila.
Okay, thanks. There are still a few questions there, but we will leave them as they are, and we cannot go through everything at the moment. It was a long morning for everybody. There is still a lot to come tomorrow. I first want to thanks a lot Anne and Fabio for the support, and Laurentina Bruno actually for being ready in the back office. Obviously, big thanks to Nadia Lamandas, who is my partner in crime, and without her, I would not be able to moderate all of this. So thanks a lot to the speaker of today, and let's have a look at the agenda of tomorrow. Thank you all. So indeed, it's I think it will come soon. As you know, the info day actually continues also this afternoon with the virtual networking of Bit2Match and with the thematic presentation question answer of today and tomorrow. So tomorrow you will see me again, and for the session on nature and biodiversity, then with other colleagues, then we'll have circular economy and quality of life with the CQL team. You will see Fabio again there. Climate mitigation and adaptation will be hosted by Beckers, who you met today, and some of the other colleagues from his team. In the lunch break, there will be again time for bilaterals and networking. And in the afternoon, you will have a session on strategic integrated projects and strategic nature projects. In that case, it will be my colleague Cesar Sioanets hosting it, and with Sharuna Zablekis and Laura Giapichelli. On day 3, as I said, it's a full morning dedicated to the specificities of clean energy transition. Also, these calls change slightly, as the head of sector said today, every year. So it's important to follow the details if you're interested in applying there. So you can keep on use Slido. Actually, it is open. You can post your sub-programs related question on the topic of day 2. Day 3 will have a different setting. They will open the floor in the chat for question, as there will be smaller groups. But don't worry, if you have asked any question in the Slido until today, we will actually provide it to the colleagues for the day 3. And you can still book one-to-one meeting in Networking Bit2Match until 31st of May with CINEA expert, but until the 15th of November, which is the very, very last day before the CET deadline, to have meetings among potential applicants. Watch out, because some national contact points are also there on the platform. You can contact them, and very often they are the best suited to give you answer about your national context, which other project you could network with, which can other beneficiary. So it's definitely now time for all of us to leave the computer, enjoy a meal and a walk. It is certainly time for me to thank again all the speakers and the magic colleagues in the back office, not just Nadia, but also Marisa and Noemi, and obviously the audiovisual team. Thank you all for watching us, and see you tomorrow.